There we go. We are live. Hello and welcome to this week's Awdry Corner. We haven't been on for a few weeks, so this is kind of quite nice, and we're sort of just following on from the anniversary from the 12th of May, which was a lot of really nice stuff actually. Luke, I very much enjoyed what you produced for.
Thank you very much.
So I'm joined tonight by my friend Luke Ryan.
Hello.
The man that owns a steam loco, Ben.
Hello.
Some of you, I'm pretty sure, will recognise the face at the bottom. I think it's bottom right. Ryan. I feel better because Ryan had stopped drinking Coke, and I said I'd stop drinking Diet Coke and Pepsi Max.
You're just calling him out on air now.
Oh no, I've lost about 2 stone by drinking that.
And then we're also joined by Andrew.
Hello.
So tonight we are discussing the narrow gauge railways of Sodor, and it's for that reason. We've got a couple of our guests tonight. Ryan is. I'm going to call you our historian, Ryan, because you know your narrow gauge.
Oh, yes. Yep, I do.
And obviously, many of you will know that Luke.
Very extensive narrow gauge library in right behind us.
Very nice. And most of you on Twitter and probably on YouTube know that Luke is a guard or trainee guard.
Assistant guard. Thank you very much.
Sorry. I apologise. Guard. Hey, guard. And cleaner on the Culdee Railway.
Trainee blockman. I'm ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, you certainly are.
Good man.
And Andrew is a fireman on the Culdee Railway.
I am indeed.
So, Andrew, how long have you now been volunteering at the TR?
20 years now. Started 2001 was my first year. The Golden Jubilee year. I went up for just a weekend volunteering that year and the year after. My dad took me up, and then year after that I turned 16, and I took myself off up there for a fortnight on my own, and haven't looked back. So I've done all sorts. I'm a fireman, as you say, also duty sedman, do outdoor work, bit of loco maintenance, various committees and bits and pieces, but generally to be found on a footplate when I'm up there. So yeah, it's good fun. You should all come and give it a go.
Yes, it is my plan. I'm going to start volunteering. I should have been. Well, I think we were discussing this before we came on air, Andrew. You should have just done a turn down at the TR, shouldn't you?
Yeah, end of April. In theory, I would have been there, but obviously, circumstances being what they are, it was not to be. But hopefully, it won't be too long before we're all back playing trains. But who knows? Who knows?
I should have been down this week, just gone.
Right.
Annoyingly. Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's just wait until we can get there.
Absolutely. Indeed. So we're going to kick things off with the might not be everybody's favourite, possibly my favourite-ish of the narrow gauge on Sodor. We're going to start off with the Skarloey because it was the first one that Awdry introduced. You know what? Let's go with the basic thing. Let's kick it off. We'll start with Ryan. What's your earliest memory of the Skarloey?
Great little engines, because when I went to Wales. I think it was Rill we went to when I was about 4 or 5, and first set of railway series books I was given were Great Little Engines was among them. And during that trip, we also picked up a postcard, which I don't have anymore, of Wharf Station. Now, 4-year-old me is fully convinced this engine with a face on it, looking pretty the real deal. So I was begging Mummy. I was convinced that Sodor was a real place as well. So that was kind of my first memories of it. And then later on, discovered 4 Little Engines and Gallant Old Engine and the other Skarloey Railway books, and just kind of fell in love with it from there. It was interesting, and then getting to know the history of it more, getting to know the history of the Talyllyn more when I was older. And next thing I know, I've built up this huge narrow gauge library as the years have went on. Some of which has went on to be used by Chris Edengreen for Steam Locus and Profile, which I'm quite proud of. Chris has used my books quite a few times. So, yeah, that's my earliest memories of it.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just thinking, I sort of, I think I was, how old? I was about 21 first time I got down. Just it had never been really possible, but it had always been, I think, because I know I've said it before, because I'd read Little Old Engine was my first book, and I'd read it or had it read to me before TV series, so I was very familiar with all these red engines and things. So I'd always had kind of an interest in it. But yeah, when I first went down there, it was just it's a great, when you see the engines that you've sort of grown up with, and they, it looks like them. It's a very nice.
Yeah, my first exposure to the actual railway was when we went down for the SIF trip back in 2007. It was just amazing. It was just brilliant seeing this with your friends, seeing this place that you've always wanted to go with your friends was just incredible. I think that's when I met you first time, Andrew, as well.
I think it was either there or possibly the Worth Valley. I can't remember which came first, but yeah.
No. Talyllyn predated that. Talyllyn definitely predated that one. Because the Worth Valley trip was 2008.
Yeah. So yeah, that would have been then. Yes.
Because actually, that's where I sort of first saw you, Andrew, because it's on one of the SIF videos from back in 2007, and you were giving a tour.
That's right. Yes.
You were giving a tour round Pendraig.
Yeah, I remember it was mentioned on the forums that a load of people were going to be visiting, and it happened to coincide with me being down for a week or two. So I sort of said, well, if I'll probably be around. And as it happened, I think I was spare fireman that day, so I knew I'd be on sheds during the day. So I said, well, drop by, and I'm sure we can kind of show you around, sort of thing. So had a little walk around the sheds and a bit of a chat, and it was good fun.
It was had by all.
Happy days.
Dad, I think you said, was it Little Old Engine or the Gallant Old Engine was your first?
I think it was Gallant, actually thinking about it. And I remember picking that up from the Furness Model Railway exhibition, because the Talyllyn Railway Northwest group used to go there quite a lot with the stand. And I always remember looking at it thinking, oh, this is a bit different, because I'd been used to like Thomas, James and Gordon and all them. And that would have been, I think that was my first narrow gauge engines book out of any of them. And then that would have been followed with Little Old Engine, very old. I think 4 Little Engines would be one of the last ones I would have got. I think by then I'd already had small railway engines as well. So, but yeah, that was my first book, and I didn't visit the Talyllyn until 2007, I think 2008. And then I didn't get a chance to get back until they did the overnight running. So that would be 2011, I think it was. Thoroughly enjoyed that weekend. That was fantastic.
Is that when you did the nighttime run?
Yeah. And one of the best runs was behind number 3. That was superb. Unfortunately, the footage is long lost, as it was on an old phone. But it was good because they had the beer tent up at Abergynolwyn right next to the signal box. And me and my mate were asleep in the disabled coach. Woke up ready for, I think it was a 6 o'clock departure behind Tom Rolt. And there's actually footage by Penny Steam on YouTube.
How you fell asleep in Van 7, I'll never know. That thing rattles.
No, it wasn't. No, No, it was the bogey coach, but apparently they use it for
Oh, sorry, yeah, one of
the one with
slims.
the seats down the edges.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kicked our shoes off and then fell
20.
asleep in there. It must have been like 4 o'clock in the morning. And of course, we woke up and the Corris coach had been shunted off, ready for the afternoon. Because the afternoon it was like was there a charter on? I think because it was number 3, the Corris coach and Corris wagons. Because we went up to Dolgott, me and my friend went up there and we were watching it coming across the viaduct and then back down. But yeah, 6 o'clock in the morning off wharf, and Tom Rolt was the engine, making plenty of noise. And then we had a lovely breakfast at 8:30 in the morning. Slow trundle back.
I only know this because I was reading about it the other night. Van 7 is the ex-refreshment van, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Quite heavily
rebuilt into a coach.
And before that, it was one of the Penrins, wasn't it? Wow, quite
I think it was, yeah. But it's been repurposed a number of times.
Yeah,
Still
because it started as an open Penryn, but I think it had dumb buffers and a roof on it originally, from a picture I've seen. Then refreshment van, then a generator when they were building up to Nangwernal, and then the disabled coach. The
plenty of uses then.
Yeah. Andrew, so I was going to say, I sort of know this because I read it in the book, because you talk about your earliest memories of the TR in the volunteer, the 60 years of volunteering, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've just finished your chapter, your bit up. But for the benefit of our viewers, how did you, Skarloey, and obviously how it links into the TR sort of thing. What's your earliest memories?
Sorry, the audio broke up slightly there, but I think you asked how did I get started on the Talfin? Was that the question?
Earliest Skarloey memory, but I was saying I'd already read it in your in the volunteering, the 65 years of volunteering book. You sort of talk about it. So
yeah. So earliest Skarloey memory. I was thinking about this earlier. I think when I was quite young, probably only 4 or 5. We didn't at that time. I didn't have any of the Skarloey books myself, but some friends who we used to often go and see, they had various of the Railway series books, and I'd always gravitate towards them whenever we went to visit. And one of them was Gallant Old Engine, and that really, I suppose, stuck with me. I think partly the quite a striking front cover to that book. You know, the sort of full in smoke box view of Reneus at the station. It's quite a striking image, and obviously the characters in that book were different from the ones I was familiar with. You know, different size, different look, different livery. So I guess it made a bit of an impression, and most importantly, that tempting little reference to the Talfin in the sort of in the footnote and so on, and at the end of the book, and that really intrigued me. The idea that there's a real railway out there that's like something on Sodor, and over the years, obviously, came across the other books and read those, and obviously developed an interest in real railways and found out about the Talfin. But it was very much, I think, Gallant Engine and the sort of first grabbed my attention.
Yeah, I think Little Old Engine and Gallant are my two favourite Skarloey books. Now it's been quite amusing this, and I posted a bit about this on Twitter over the last month. Luke and I were on a video chat, and I was like, because I've got a few of the Sodor maps, and I was like, I'm gonna measure the Skarloey Railway on the maps. Yeah, came to 22 miles long, and I was just like, no, it can't be 22 miles long. And actually, then probably a week or so ago, Ben and I went through the Island of Sodor book and just looked for every references when Awdry's describing the line. And because he sort of, how is it? He starts it off, Ben. He says something like, "Is it 1 mile and 30 chains?" He sort of.
Yeah, he's describing part of the route in chains, and I, off the top of my head, I can't remember how many chains per mile and all that. So we googled that, and then so the first bit worked out about a mile and an eighth, I think it came to, and then
from Crowburn's Gate to
Crosby Kern, yeah, and then we just went through the rest of the references to try and pick up as many points as we could, to work out the rest of it. So I think overall, right up to the incline of the quarry, I think it's 15 and a half miles we got it to, which seemed a bit more believable, I suppose.
And from Crowburn's Gate to Skarloey, through the loop, it's about 13 mile and a quarter.
13 and an eighth.
Which seem more.
13.125 miles. So yeah.
Which
doesn't really that bad considering Welsh Highland length. There's no eclipse in the Welsh Highland in terms of its length.
Yeah,
which the engines.
I think
the original length uses 20 odd minutes. Was it 20 or 30 odd minutes? I mean, those who were in work to death by the 1950s, if that had been the case.
That's to say, I think number 2 would very much struggle to do 22 miles with just one water stop up that the rev describes.
Well, Ben and I have discussed this, and we have decided. Sorry, Will, but you've got to have a water stop at Glenelg, because this is why I asked in the TR group. I just went, how far can the engines do, and on the TR, and the general consensus from like Martin Fuller and Eddie Castellan was you could just about do a round trip if you weren't stopping on the TR. But of course, half of that's going down the gradient.
Whereas the Skarloey is pretty much like double the TR length, and it's uphill, so you'd be working.
You'd be looking at what we worked out. Was it about 11 miles from Crowburn's Gate to Reneus Station?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
So I mean, Andrew, Luke, as you were volunteers there, would you say that would push it for number 2 to do 11 miles on one tank?
You'd be sat filling it for a while, I think.
It's a big risk then, of course, if, say, the water column wasn't working at Reneus, you'd be in trouble.
Yeah, I reckon realistically you'd probably have another watering stop before.
Yeah, that's what we'd sort of thought. But yeah, and it was funny. It works out. The Skarloey works out pretty much bang on the same length as the Festiniog.
I can believe that.
And actually, Ben, I'll say Ben and I, but it's more Ben's been working on a working timetable for my layout, and we sort of worked out a timing, and it was bang on the Festiniog's 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, to do it. And that allowed for a watering stop as well.
I would say the Festiniog can go a lot faster though. Is your main takeaway from that? Because I think 1 hour and 15 minutes is that just like one way up the line?
Yeah. That's Port Maddock to Blana Festiniog.
Yeah, but again, they're running at 25 mile an hour. Well, around that, I think. They run a lot faster than the TR or Skarloey would.
So the thing is, I didn't do off top speed. I did it off average speed for the timetable because I was factoring in the fact that I could have gone to the nth degree and tried working out how quick an engine could accelerate and decelerate. But there was no point. It was just working off an average speed. So it worked off the average speed being 11 mile an hour. Because But I had to take a little bit of a guess because I wasn't so sure how fast you guys would actually run, between stations. So, or what certain top speeds some of your sections were. So I was sort of allowing for 15 tops.
I think it's 15.
I know.
Well, yeah.
Sometimes I've been. It feels like they're clopping on quite nicely. But then smaller engines, you do get the feel that you're going faster than you actually are, though, don't you?
Oh, Andrew, I noticed Andrew had frozen.
20 miles an hour.
Sorry, guys. Here too well.
Well, we might have lost Andrew there, sadly. Yeah, someone just said that the top speed on the Fez is 20, not 25. My bad, sorry. I knew it was in the 20 mile per hour ballpark. But yeah, someone was actually asking how long the trip of Skarloey would take, and I think hour and 15, or like maybe hour and a half one way, so about a 2.5 hour round trip.
Yeah,
I'd say it's decent.
Yeah, because we looked at the TR on a few timetables, because that thingy book I've got, I can't think what it's called, little pamphlet thing, shows timetables, and it was about 40, 45.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone said in the chat right here, Awdry Railway top speed is 20 miles, as is the Welsh Highland, and that's about 2 hours one way.
Yeah, I can see at about, if you're averaging at about 11 miles an hour, which is probably what they would probably do on the Skarloey. Hour and 15 sounds good.
Which we will get onto this when we get onto Mid Sodor, but Ben and I chat about Wilbert's timing for the Mid Sodor. I don't know what Duke was running on. Nitroglycerine or something, because
I was about to say nitrous.
But yeah, so
they converted them to oil burners, oil burgers. Yeah, they'll just.
You hungry there, Luke?
Maybe.
But yeah, I think it's very interesting, that, especially over the last month, while I've been really looking into it, is that I see it's very easy some people to think, Skarloey, the TR's, it's just the TR, and it really isn't when you look into it. I mean, you've got Glennock, which is essentially very, very similar to Aberlourpenny at the Corris, and I think, even when you just look at the shape and the horseshoe nature of it, it isn't quite the same. And I for me, the Glennock section and sort of the, heading towards the tunnel, but not the tunnel itself, I often think of being quite Corris-like. And then Ryan, you pointed out the other week to me that the that girder bridge that you see Skarloey crossing is based on somewhere else, isn't it?
Yeah, it's based in Arlesdale up at Welsh Highland.
Am I right? There's a few of those bridges like that.
What, on the Welsh Highland?
Yeah, on the Welsh Highland. Is there a few that's to that sort of?
I think there's a couple. The one in the books is definitely based on the specific one that Ryan's mentioned, but there are. I'm pretty damn sure there are a couple like that girder bridge. I'm just trying to get the illustration up now. I can't remember which book it's in.
Little Old Engines, Home at Last.
There we are. I just turned onto it like almost straight away.
It's a lovely one. There we go. It's the little things I like with John T. Kenny. It's stuff that you've got the farmer there with his border collie and the sheep, and I love the little things he puts in. It's like the one the illustration in the same book, Luke, if you can reference it, where you see Sir Handel with Gertrude and Millicent. And I think we sort of talked about where that would be on the Skarloey, and I think we sort of said like north of Crosney-Kern, but in truth, it's actually a location on the TR. But it's at the time, the photograph that John T. Kenny will have worked from, it actually wasn't part of the passenger.
Give me a second. I have a reference for the original photo. If you give me a second.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't really plan this one out, Luke. But I'll just do some little music while Luke's looking for his books. But yeah, I think for me, it's I like the fact that clearly Wilbert was looking at several areas when he was created his Skarloey Railway. It wasn't just TR.
Wasn't it mentioned in an article that he'd looked at different railways when he was developing the Skarloey?
What's that? Sorry, Ryan.
I'm saying, was it not mentioned in a Railway Modeler article? I think it was around about the 1960s or so that Wilbur had actually looked at various different railways from over the years.
Well,
when he was developing the Skarloey, because I think he drew up some info.
I started reading Thomas the Tank Engine Man last night. Well, before that, I'd flipped to a page looking for a very specific quote about the origins of the name Skarloey and, the origins. And it said, a quote from Wilbert about it was, "I have looked at the Welsh Highland, the Corris, the Festiniog and the Talyllyn railways in the development of this railway." So he was very much taking from all the Welsh narrow gauge. Obviously, it was primarily TR based, but you had flavours of Corris and Welsh Highland.
Yeah, because I was going to say it wasn't a case that maybe Dolby just went, "Oh, I'll use this place," and it's Aberlefenny as a reference point. Clearly, Wilbert had gone, "This is I want this. Use this. Use this." It's interesting. Yes, that's the one.
So that's that there, and then that's that there.
and Luke, where of course is it? Because it's not actually on the passenger section.
No. So that's north of Abergynolwyn. This is before they extended the railway up to Nantgwernol, so that's on the quarry line. Then they did it for a photo charter.
I also read something about they sometimes backed passenger stock up a passenger train up along the extension, so they could let another engine into Abergynolwyn.
Potentially, in the very early days of Pres, I imagine.
Yeah. And incidentally, that illustration is clearly that photograph is clearly the inspiration for the illustration, because number 3 has got is it
number 9 and 10 coaches
10 behind it,
10 and 11 on the Skarloey.
Incidentally, regarding Aberlefenny and Glennock, it's interesting when you read iOS. Ben and I were discussing this probably a month or so ago, because I'm thinking that it would make a nice layout to do would be Glennock, and we it was only when we found some more photos that actually the chapel isn't as close to Aberlefenny as Wilbert infers it is in iOS. It's actually like not part of the station, whereas iOS states that you can get access from the platform to the chapel. But incidentally, in the illustration and the photograph that it's based on, you haven't got 4 little engines to hand, have you, Luke?
Pardon, sorry.
Actually, sorry, no, you don't even need to do that. I can post it. I was going to say about an illustration, but I can get the picture up, I think. And not planned this. More organised.
So Luke said to say in the comments that you could say that the TR is a stew of Welsh narrow gauge railway. Definitely a stew of the Corris and the Talyllyn more so than anything else in its modern form, at least. But the Skarloey is definitely a stew of Welsh narrow gauge.
I'm going to try and get to.
And also, Lucas, the hard wooden seats aren't that bad, genuinely.
No, I was going to say you'll cope.
I wouldn't want to be on them pre-relaying of the Talyllyn, though.
I'm just trying to
maybe just the once to say you've done it, and then never again.
I've done that in Coach 4 at the TR. You can take the cushions off; they're not like bolted into the seats or anything.
Right.
because it's the original woodwork still.
Yeah.
So they're not going to bolt anything into it. So the cushions are they're made to fit, but you can slide them off and ride it on wooden seat if you want.
Right, I should have two this should be interesting for our viewers. So I'm just going to go on to share screen.
Oof, fancy.
Application window. I've forgotten how to do this at all. Hold on a minute. I'll have to do it like this. If this doesn't work, I do apologise. So let's click share. Right, Chrome has lost permission to capture your screen. Okay, I can't do that. Never mind. That's an end to that one. Sorry, folks. I will try something else that might work.
So, Sodor Railway modeler Stevens asked there, what's your favourite memory at the TR? This is like a slight side subject, but I think that's favourite TR memory. I've got a few.
Mine have got to be the nighttime runs, nice and simple. I've done 2 overnighters, and the second one I did, and there was myself and 3 friends, and we actually slept in the Glyn Valley coach that night, so we had a bit of luxury on the cushions. And then the next day was this Land Rover Series 1 Land Rover get together at the wharf, and I do own a Series 1, so that to me was fantastic. I think there was like 43 turned up of all various shapes and sizes, so it was good to see. And then called in at Bala on the way home because it was their weekend. The Bala, the Hunslet get together at Bala Lake that weekend as well. So we called in there and then headed off home. But yeah, they're just. I think it's because nighttime running, you can't see anything. You've just really got the sound of the engine working hard, and it just sounds fantastic going up the valley. So yeah, memories that will always stick with me.
I've guarded a nighttime trip. Got back on, got out. Like, I finished my guard's duty. I think it was about 12:30 in the morning. And we were Dolgok for it, so that was always nice. One of my favorite engines. It was beautiful. I think one of my favorite little memories, which was quite a fun. It was a really, really happy coincidence. It was after a bar. There was like a members and volunteers barbecue up at Abergynolwyn, and they'd run like a train up to Abergynolwyn to take everyone there and back. And I was getting the train down, and it was going dark. The lights were on the coaches, and it was just got talking to the other people in the coach and everything. And one of them happened to be Diana Awdry, Christopher Awdry's ex-wife, and she was lovely. And it just ended up talking all about the railway series and everything. It was just a lovely atmospheric nighttime trip back down to Wharf, chatting about the books and everything. And she's got such a love for it still, and she's an active volunteer at the railway still, which is lovely.
Oh, that's lovely, Luke. Just say I can't do any screen sharing. I'd have to quit Chrome to do it. So I wanted to show a picture of Aberlefenny, the illustration of number 4. The photograph of number 4 at Aberlefenny in the 30s, and actually it might be the 20s, and then the shot of Peter Sam at Glennock, and you can see it's the photo. But yeah, never mind. Ryan, what's your best memory of the TR?
Probably my favourite memory of being in the TR has got to be doing the drive experience back in 2009. Basically, it was me driving, and everyone who was on the trip with us came as like our own private train, which was pretty amazing. It was really good fun. Drove number 4. No, we drove number 4 up the valley all the way up to, I think it was Abergynolwyn. We never went all the way up to Nantgwernol because I didn't think do driver's experience all the way up that far. It was just a really nice night. It was really good fun. We're on private train. I actually found I was actually quite competent doing it. I was really quite nervous, but I mean, it's a really nice local. And on top of that too, the most interesting part of it was, I never realised it before, but given the different whistles and the guy who was manning my driver's experience actually played as a tune using the whistles on the way back down.
Was that on number 4?
I think we've actually need to dig it. Yeah, number 4.
No,
it's great. I think is it Great Western Castle whistles they've got?
Yeah. It's either both from a hall or both from a castle. I can't remember exactly which, but I know that the large whistle and the small whistle aren't from the same class member. Like, they're both from either a hall or a castle, but they're from 2 different locos.
Yeah, 2 different locos. Yeah, that was a really nice night. I think it was just more the fact that being lads and just enjoying the atmosphere. We went to the railway inn up at Abergynolwyn after it just to round off the evening. It was great. It's absolutely great. Good memories.
There's
good times.
So many just like nice atmospheric. There's just moments on that at the place where like everything just lines up right and it's just beautiful and nice. Like, it's hard to explain. It just happens. It's just such a nice place.
I think for me, my sort of, I have 2 really. One of them, the sort of second one, and I don't mean to diminish it, actually was last July when I met up with you down there, Luke. And it was actually, and it wasn't so much being back on the railway. It was the people who I met, who I've now made friends with. You know, I was introduced to Kez and Steve, you know, and with the Garden Railway and things like that. And and then, you know, a few of the other volunteers who were down, who, you know, and it was really, Mads was down that day, I think. Yeah. And it was just really nice. And actually, I remember we went up the line together, Luke, and you were Luke, me, and Lass, my border collie. She was between us. And we just, you know, talking about the line and stuff. And it was just that friendly atmosphere, which is one of the reasons why I've decided I'm going to volunteer.
It's what keeps me going back.
Yeah, definitely. But I'd say my main memory is actually, I've got it recorded. Was my first visit, and it was back in about 2008. The recording of it is terrible. It's pixelated. It was I think it was on my old Nokia phone or something. It was awful. But it was me and my late dad, and we'd been on the train, and we parked up at Abergynolwyn. So we're waiting to watch number 2 depart because it brought us back to Abergynolwyn and head up to Nantgwernol. And it was a July, I think, and it was just really damp. It was just where that, you know, that low cloud, it just doesn't leave the valley. It's just, you know, you can only see for so far. And they opened the drain cocks on number 2, and it was just this massive cloud of steam, and you couldn't see a thing. And it just lingered, and then you just heard the chuff, 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 and she just emerged out of the steam. And the firewoman who was on just said, "Oh, did you get a good photo then?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's great, brilliant." And it was just that was like lovely, and I'll always remember that. Always remember it. Sodor Railway Modeller. How about the walks up the abandoned incline? That's good. That's quite a good one because we can link that into the Skarloey. You've been up to Bringlass, haven't you, Luke?
I've been up to Bringlass many times, and also Bryneg Lewis.
Sorry, Bryneg Lewis.
Yeah, no, I've been up to the quarry a couple of times. I came back with this.
Ta-da!
Chunk of slate. I've used and broken up on a few of my models. That's what that's from. But yeah, no, it's nice because you can just walk up there and find chunks of slate, the old tramway, horse-drawn tramway rails embedded in the ground as you're walking down, wheels off wagons. The old inclines are just amazing to see because there's quite a few. There's not just the one. Because the main one that you see is when you're at Nangwernal Station, and that's just the first incline because there's so many more inclines when you're up at the quarry. And you can just see them all. There's only a couple still standing now, sadly. But yeah, no, it's so much fun walking up there. There's a lot to discover.
This is what actually, to link back to our journey together, Luke, this was what I loved actually, because Luke was just there going, if you look over there now, you'll see a wagon down in the ravine. All right, okay. And then the best one is where you go, and if you look there, that is Taliclin's riveted second tank.
Yeah, second saddle tanks uses like a little permanent way hut just before quarry siding.
Which was
it's rusting away now, but like they've kind of had to accept the fact that it's going to rust away, because if they tried to move it now, it'd just disintegrate. It's been there for years. It was their pre-preservation.
Yeah.
This is what I do like about, again, how Awdry put his own sort of twist on things. Is, of course, you've got the mineral extension on the Skarloey that goes to the Benglass quarry, and of course Awdry puts a twist on it because it didn't just close; it was bought by the Ministry of Defence. So I wouldn't recommend walking up there after it's bought by the MOD. You might get shot.
Kaboom.
Yeah. And there's a great descriptive bit, isn't there, in iOS about that, where he talks about engines. They come up to the gates, and then the little black diesel comes along and collects the wagons and scurries away. I can't remember the exact quote from it. But yeah, it's very nice. Is there anything else, gentlemen, you'd like to cover on the Skarloey before we move on?
No, I don't know. Can't think of anything, Tom. Mine's gone blank.
We covered some of the little niche little bits. No, so it might be nice to move on. Yeah.
So I suppose in sort of order of the books.
Just from my memories there. Just want to talk about memories that I just remembered one. It was this last time I was down. I was with Adam Ashford and Christine Green. Thinking about that, that's when they were shooting Abergin. No, that's when they were shooting at Vale Rydal, and we went up to Dalgoch one morning, and we took a few photos. There was one I put up on Facebook, and another one I put up on Twitter a couple of days ago. To celebrate Founders Day. Now, funny story behind that picture. There was a chap had walked across the railway line to where the water column is, and proceeded to take photos of Dalgoch from that side of the station. The station master on that day was not having any of it, and he just kept haranguing the guy in front of him, trying to take pictures, trying to challenge him. See the trouble I had trying to get decent photos of the engine in the really nice light too, with this pollution just going on all around me. It was funny at the time, but yeah.
That's interesting actually, because the day
inconvenient
when I went up with Luke, we had we got to Dalgoch, and Andrew, sadly, his connections wasn't very good, so that's why Andrew's no longer with us. I remember, I think it's to Andrew who was fine, or I think Andrew Young was driver.
Yeah, two Andrews on the footplate.
And I just said, I said, is it okay if I go and take a photo from the gallant old engine shot? And they were just like, yeah, fine. So I just walked onto the permanent way, took my photo, and got back on.
Yeah, a lot of people ask to get that photo. So if you just ask the driver and fireman nicely as they water, because there's nothing going to be coming down the other way. They know they've got the brakes on.
I mean, the photo I got, it was quite a nice photo. It's not exactly the same because it's at the new water column where you
want one of the Victorian trains, because they stop at the old column still.
I'd really want to travel on one of the Victorian trains. That's actually, in fairness, I want to travel in Van 5.
I love it so much.
That.
No, sorry. Hand to hand.
Who's that fella? I keep seeing that fella. He's always about him, He's...
No, 3D scanner me. Yeah, no, travelling in Van 5 like this, out the side, looking down the train, you've just got the countryside out at the side. It's so nice. Until you get to, just before Hendy and all the brambles start getting at your ankles.
The pain you go through, when you're a TR volunteer.
But no, I was an assistant guard on the Victorian train one day. It was my first day as an assistant guard. Actually, I'd just been promoted the day before, and my next term was on a Victorian train, which was really nice. And my guard was like on the way back down. He's like, "Do you want to go in one of the coaches and do some? Because we'll stop at the old incline for a bit on the way back down from Nant, and we'll have a talk to them there if you want to go into one of the coaches and tell them about the old incline, because there's a bit more flexibility on the timetable, so we could just stop and have a chat with the passengers."
Lovely.
Oh, nice one. Lovely.
Just looking at time and things, I think we'll move on now to the Culdee Fell Railway. It's very it's interesting that I was reading the Thomas the Tank Engine Man book. It touches on this, and obviously Snowdon Mountain Railway had clearly picked up on what the connection with the Skarloey to the Talcott, and I thought, we'll write to the Reverend Awdry, and I think very much it was the case of they wrote and they said, could you incorporate it? But it works really well, because if I've got a few of the maps, and I've got the 58 map, so this is obviously prior to mounted engines, and Culdee Fell is marked on there, so it had already been decided that Culdee Fell was going to be like the highest point on Sodor. So it does work quite well. It was a very early railway series memory for me, and although it's not exactly to do with the mounted engines themselves, it was the first time I noticed that one of the Scottish twins wasn't black anymore, and that's when I was like, blue, okay. What I do like with that book is how Awdry kind of starts with something familiar and then goes off onto it. I suppose maybe it was a safe option to sort of start with the Skarloey and then go into mountain engines, whereas obviously once we get to Duke the Lost engine, he sort of throws us straight in with Mid-Sodor. Obviously there's only been the one book on the mountain engines. I'm sure, which links into a question we were asked today about, what further sort of stories from the...
Yeah, Skarloey Railway 01 on Twitter asked, kind of like, are there any more stories from the Snowdon that you'd adapt to keep the characters around? Because isn't one of the... I know it's been said, but I'm not too sure where the source comes from, but like Reverend Awdry had said, like, well, there's not that many kind of... Because the health and safety and the way the railways runs very strict. So there wasn't that many, incidents to adapt into stories, if you would, back then. But there have been there's been a few since the 60s. There's definitely potential there. I think Ryan knows a couple.
Yeah, there was a spectacular one that there's been a plane has crashed at the side of the mountain at one point, and people who were visiting the railway ended up getting stranded up on the top of the mountain. We've adapted that for the ERS. Another one where there was children actually using the railway for sleds to sledge down the hill. And probably my favourite was right around about 2011 when someone actually drove a Land Rover up to the top of the mountain, which was quite a spectacular feat in itself. There's been a few which we've adapted for the extended railway series, and have actually been quite well received.
Yeah,
but again, with having to operate a railway in complete safety is a difficult task to actually write compelling and decent stories for these characters.
Yeah, because from a railway point of view, as Luke said, it's very sort of strict how it operates. They all propel the train up and limited in length and everything else like that. So it's
like the way you've just brought it up then, Ben, like all the incidents you kind of listed off, Ryan, is less things going wrong with the railway, but things going wrong to the railway, like external things going wrong rather than the railway.
I can only think of about two 2 minor derailments
Yeah,
in like
was
the past
it
20 years, and I think
Whitford?
it was number 3 at Clogwin. I think somehow had managed to detach itself, and the brakes came on. They came to a stop, and it was fine. I can't just quite remember what the failure was that caused that, and I think there was another one actually in Clanberrish Yard itself. And other than that, as you rightly said, Luke, and as Ryan's described, yeah, externally, there's probably a lot, even a lot more.
I'd never heard of, actually. I'm interested by that now.
Yeah, no, I'd never heard that one.
I'm
either.
guessing that's probably like light private aircraft, not like a Boeing.
No. Yeah. I think everyone would remember that if it was a Boeing, wouldn't it? But actually, saying that, there's one of my friends is looking at doing his private pilot's license next year, and I was chatting to him recently, and because he knew I did flying lessons many years ago, and he was like, "Oh, you should get back into it." I can't afford to, but I always said I'd love to fly over Snowdon, and I sent him a clip. It's on YouTube. There's actually quite a few of microlights flying over the top of Snowdon when there's snow on the ground, and it looks just so picturesque. Shame that there's actually nothing running at that point of the year, but it's so nice to see, and it's a beautiful area. But yeah, it's a railway I've been to twice and never ridden it because it's either been shut for one reason or another. So yeah, it's still on my to-do list.
I've only been the once to the Snowdon, and I went. It couldn't afford because it was like this is a good few years ago now. Only about. How old was I? I would have been 18, but it was like a family holiday. We'd gone to Wales, and essentially, the intention was my parents wanted a week away, while I had a week playing trains. So we went. Like I managed to get to the Bala, the Fez, quite a few that I hadn't done at that point. Snowdon was one of them, but my parents wanted to come on it, so we didn't go on the steam because it was expensive. Went up the diesel, which I'm going to be honest, I really lovely line, but I'd only go up the Snowdon again if it was on the steam.
Yeah,
and I'd say if you're going to the Snowdon, go on the steam because as nice as it still is with the diesels, go on the steam because you're going to get far more out of it.
I've done it. I think I've done it 3 times. I think first time it was nearly 20 years ago now, and we were so lucky. For those that don't know, because it'll sound weird if I say my dad and my grandma, I was brought up by my grandparents. So when I say dad, it's actually my granddad. So it was my granddad and grandma and me, and we went up, and it was the most beautiful day, and you could see for miles. It was like you couldn't have done it better. And then I think me and my dad went up again. I think it wasn't very great conditions. And then the last time we went up, and I've got a selfie of us both together, it was again really, really beautiful. So you could see. And what always struck me was, you're climbing up, and there's one point where you just look out and you're like, oh my goodness, we are high. You look down at the low, and it's just like, wow, it's incredible. I think the first time we went up, it was steam. I think all the time.
Yeah, the times I've been there have been the only time we've actually managed to make it all the way to the top was 2009, the last trip we done. I think it was. I mean, but have you actually noticed in the Snowdon engines? I don't know if I've still got them. I think it was Enid had taken us up the second time, which stopped at where is it? I think it's Clogwin, just below the summit, and the engine had a mural of Homer Simpson on the cab door.
Yeah, I've seen
got a photo of it somewhere.
They don't have it anymore, but I've seen that. It's still hilarious. It's the weirdest thing.
Let's see if I can find it. But it's so cool. I mean, it's so not in the Railway series spirit, but it's so fun. I mean, but it's so funny, just as a modern pop culture reference.
Ryan, when you just disappeared before, some people were asking about what the plane was on that incident with the plane crash.
Is it like a light aircraft?
I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, I'm not entirely sure. You need to look up the books. I've got it. I mean, I've got it a PM on SIF somewhere. We have adapted it into an extended railway series story somewhere. I can't remember. I think it was me that wrote. I think it's one of my ones that I wrote. I'm talking years ago. I'm talking about what better part of 10, probably 15 years ago.
Hmm.
Would it be 15 years ago? Better part of 10 years ago.
I must admit, I think for me with the Culdee Fell Railway, it's kind of, I don't feel I necessarily needed to see more. I like the fact it's there. I think the one book sort of works. I think if I suppose Wilbur could have maybe looked abroad for inspiration. Obviously, with the Swiss railways, rack and pinion, any incidents there could have been adapted maybe. But I think we sort of, it's well documented how actually into this period, into the later books, Wilbert was struggling for content, and I think it was very much Eric Marriott, the editor, was sort of the one who was kept pushing him to write more. So it doesn't overly surprise me that Mountain Engines was just one book.
It would be nice to see more, but I'm not like overtly clamoring for more.
Yeah.
It's one of those. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, carry no, because I was going to say we'll move on to.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it's one of those things where, like, I'm not kind of looking for it, but a couple of people have mentioned George's video from the past couple of years. So the NWR Steam, he did a really nice Culdee Fell story, and it's stuff like that. Like it'll just pop up occasionally. Someone will do like a written story or something like George did, and then it's like, yeah, no, that's really nice. It's nice to see someone do something from this rarely used part of like the lore.
I think that's a very good point. So that was in obviously book 20, 19, and then 20, of course, we went back to the Skarloey, and then the next sort of narrow gauge is obviously book 22, small railway engines, which is, I mean, Luke and I have talked about this before about how much, because obviously we're building up to mid Sodor, and how much of a backstory was ever planned from day one. I think definitely by the time we get to book 22, he'd already got this all planned out, because of course had the mid Sodor layout appeared at this on the exhibition circuit at this point or not? We're talking 1967, I think.
I want to say that he made the layout like a good few years before the mid Sodor was ever mentioned in the books. I'd like to think personally he had the idea for it at least when he was doing small railway engines.
I think yeah,
because you look at the illustrations of all the stations, and like you see the green, and it's illustrated exactly the same way it is in Duke the Lost Engine, just obviously with the 15-inch gauge track and stuff. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So it was that I feel like as he was developing the Arlesdale, he was also like, there was a 2-foot narrow gauge railway here. It is where Peter Salmon Stewart used to work, and then expanded on from that.
Funny you say that, Luke, because Arlesdale Green on the Ravenglass and Arlesdale, there's some good photographs. There's not many during its 3-foot days, but there's a couple from Arlesdale Green, and of course it's quite a well photographed place in the 50s and 60s. When the Ravenglass was running as a 15-inch and it had become preserved. So there's a good chance you might have used sort of some of their photographs as well, or as reference perhaps.
I'll be back on camera in just a second.
Yeah, that's all right. Mike, Whitehouse Films had said 1967 was Farquhar Mark I's last year on the exhibition circuit. Mid Sodor was made after the last show, so it's very close to it sort of all matches up really time wise. 1966, that's when he was writing small railway engines, because he wrote it the year before it was published. Luke, I don't know if you heard that. 1966, mid-Sodor layout was constructed.
So I think it is very much he had everything in plan before penning even small railway engines. It's interesting because, like, the first load of books, there wasn't much planning, and then when you get to this point, it's like, yeah, he's had the idea for the mid-Sodor for about 10 years, roughly, like prior to it first appearing. Maybe less, just a bit less than 10 at least.
Now, Ben, you used to be a volunteer on the Ratty, which is obviously the inspiration for the Arlesdale, the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway. I presume when you started your volunteering, very much you knew the small railway connection.
I did by then, yeah. The small railway engines, enterprising engines, those two books were some of the last ones that I got that Wilbur Awdry wrote. I'd already got quite a number of the Christopher Awdry ones. In fact, I think he even had Jock the new engine before I got them too. So I was aware that they were based on Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway. I started volunteering there 1999 because I'd done work experience there, and I went back that summer.
Just for Ben.
I did 6 weeks during the summer holidays, which was really good, and I kept my membership up for quite a bit actually. Yeah, I used to enjoy it. It was good, and then to get the small railway engines book, and then sort of see very much some of the similarities that the artist had used as references for the places on the Arlesdale Railway. It sort of all brought it together. But I also did a number of days out with Thomas events up there as well, and they still ran them.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, Ben. I was just showing some pictures from the 3-foot days of the Ratty.
Yeah, interesting with the 3-foot gauge. The engines actually all faced downhill. There was 2 of them, Nabgill and Devon, and they all faced towards Ravenglass. So they actually were smoke box downhill, not uphill. Which ideally you'd rather run them. So your firebox crown's always covered with water. Oh, it should be anyhow. It doesn't matter which direction, but yeah.
Yeah, you're in trouble otherwise. You're in trouble.
Yeah. You're in serious trouble otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do find it very interesting, just the way he had very much planned, like, a long game, if you would, with it all.
I think the illustration that always stood out to me, and because, like I said before, the TR, I was in my 20s when I first visited. The Ratty, I'd been going since I was little, because living in the north of England, and it's in the Lake District. And I remember I must have read Small Railway Engines first, because there's that shot of Mike on the turntable at Arlesdale. And I just remember going to Boot and, the terminus of the line, and just going, like, I'm here. I'm actually here. And I remember it was a great feeling. I was thinking, like, I'm actually on the...
I only went a couple times as a kid. But one of the times I went back was with my mate John Picard, and we were being hauled by River Ert, going through the forest section. It was clapping like hell, and we got sprinkled by rain.
Hooray!
So it was it's one of those things where it's just kind of like, aha, you can tell this happened to the Rev when he was here. Like, it's the little things like that.
And also, so
nice.
The illustrations by Peter Edwards of Wilbur and Teddy Boston are brilliant in that one. The drenched Teddy Boston is a brilliant one.
See, River Mike, I'll always have fond memories of River Mike, because when I turned up for my first day of work experience, the first person I met was River Mike's driver, a chap who was a fireman and then a driver at Canford in steam days, during BR days, so in the 60s, called Ron Clark, and it was a smashing fella. And I'd probably had more miles up and down the Ratty in the cab of River Mite than any of the other engines. I think Northern Rock would probably come a close second, and many a day on, or many a trip on River Esk as well. So yeah, those three sort of stick in. Well, those three engines always stick in my mind.
And the interesting thing is, and I didn't realise this, Ben, you told me this the other day, that when three small railway engines was written and published, 67, is that right? 20, no, 66, sorry. But it's a year after, no, I'm wrong, 67. Mainline engines is before it, and then very old engines is 65, the anniversary. The River Mite, which is obviously what Mike is based on, wasn't finished. Is that?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it had been planned 3 years previously that the railway could do with the new engine, and so they turned to Clarkson's, and they built it using the remains of River Esk's tender. Now, River Esk during the 20s, I think up to about 31, had a powered tender. So it was basically, you had cylinders at the front, you had cylinders on the tender, and it had 8 driving wheels under the tender. And whether it was because they couldn't keep the joints steam tight between the two, or whether it was just too much of a drain on the boiler, it wasn't really successful. And so they still had the frames from the tender kicking around, and they became the basis for the new River Mite, the 1960s River Mite, which in all intents and purposes just looked like Esk. That's what they based it on. But yeah, it was 3 years in the making, really. So the Preservation Society had come up with the idea that, and fundraised for it, and it was finished and delivered in '66. So it already, it'd obviously been discussed. It was in publication. So yeah. Wilbert sort of beat into it, I suppose.
I do want to bring it up, though, that a lot of people seem to think Mike was also built from a steam tender, but it's never mentioned in any material from the Rev. And he went quite in depth with a few of the with the Arlesdale locos. And if Rex had the steam tender, which became Mike, I think he would have wrote it down.
So the only thing he really says is they were told that they knew where engines are similar to the
it was like the Raven Glass,
and he kept it a bit ambiguous, and that was about it. The one thing that did crop up in both iOS and reading between the lines is Mike is described as a 262, which is wrong. It's a 282, and even the illustrations show that. But yeah, it's just one of the things that I've always sort of noticed.
Probably just a typo that Chris carried over.
Yeah.
Isn't there a tale in iOS about an incident at Arlesdale Green, which actually it's essentially a retelling of what happens on the.
Is that the one where the station building got taken away?
Yeah.
Arlesdale Green was never a point for. Yeah, they looked upon it as a bit of like a carbuncle. It was like, we're not really interested in it. And then it was decided that we're going to put a shelter up, which became rather dilapidated.
I'm just gonna.
And then they got taken away by the farmer or a farmer's assistant who came and picked up his or came to pick up what he thought was, I think it was chicken coop or something.
The mid-Sodor Railway had no station here at first. Arlesdale, they felt, was near enough, and only after repeated urging did they grudgingly lay a patch of gravel on the line side for a platform and dump it on a nondescript wooden shed to provide an unstaffed halt. It was so uninviting that few people used it. The platform became weed-grown and the hut decrepit. The story goes that one day a local farmer, having attended a sale, bought a second-hand hen house. The vendor promised to send it to him by rail on a certain date. The farmer sent a boy to collect it, arrived at the station, the boy loaded up the only hut he could see. Nobody noticed the mistake till the real hen house arrived a couple of days later.
Yeah.
Your authors are, of course, aware that story, similar to this one, had been told in connection with other railway station buildings. But when on a visit to Sodor recently, they met the boy's own son, now in his 70s, who's able to assure that the incident had actually happened.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember which person it was who actually told the story at Raven. I can't remember who it was. But it got passed down downstairs, so we all sort of got told the story eventually at some point.
Oh wow! Okay.
Interestingly, I saw photographs just recently of the Miteside halt, which is the front end of a boat, going up on a train before it was put in position. I'm not sure if that's Mark II or Mark III, because I think there's been about 3 different shelters up there, all boat orientated. But I don't know the reasoning why they've ever used the front end of a boat for it.
No, the Ravenglass and Arlesdale are very interesting topics because I've always loved the Ratty. I think it's such a lovely little line. It's got some of the best scenery for a railway, in my opinion. It's gorgeous.
What surprised me, and I only read this recently as well, was when you run into Dalegarth, there was a mine further on across the road, just ran straight on, but it was 2 foot gauge rather than being 15-inch or 3 foot like the original line. But it was never local worked. It was only about, I think it was just hand worked. I don't even think it was horse-drawn worked because it was only such a short distance, and it was only short-lived as well.
I suppose this is a good point to get to the good stuff. Not that what we've been talking about isn't, but let's get to some mid-Sodor. Because there's something I came across literally last night. It was an old post. I googled something and it linked me to Sif, and it was a discussion it was something said between Ryan and Doug. And as soon as I saw that, I like this. Ben and I had talked about Duke, and we were saying how it's odd that he was built at Boston Lodge because that's not where the George England was built. And then it was the line about a certain Festiniog engine was scrapped in
Mountaineer,
and then Duke.
That's the discussion between myself and Doug.
Yeah, I've had the same. I think I've had the same thought that you two might have, Ryan. Less of a new build, more of a rebuild.
Yeah, Doug and I actually bonded. Doug and I actually bonded over this discussion. We actually, this is how he and I met back in '7, and he's one of my best mates. Probably my best friend in life. And we more or less bonded over which of the George Englands actually inspired Duke. I was of the opinion that it was Prince. He's of the opinion it's Palmerston. And then when I read about Mountaineer, I thought to myself, yeah, you know what? The date's kind of long. Mountaineer was retired in 1879. Duke was built in 1880. So I'm like, I think there's some in this.
Yeah.
So
I've always kind of had
because I think what was it? Little Giant and what was the other one? What was the other large England that had been delivered at the time?
Welsh Pony.
Welsh
I
Pony.
know we had Little Giant and something else. Was it Welsh Pony?
Yeah.
What did we have? And you thought it was? I'm looking forward to that one coming back.
That would be
nice
brilliant.
To see England
They've been
back,
doing some really good process on that recently. It's looking brilliant. It's only taken them 40 odd years. No, seriously though, like the fact that they are doing it is amazing, and props to them.
But I also like, if you go with this little theory with Mountaineer, what we were discussing this last night, Ben? What was it? The line about is it referred to something like it's hopeless, so we're scrapping it. It's something quite blunt about the engine.
Yeah.
And I quite like, and it also refers about derailments and things. And I'm almost thinking it's a bit like Sir Handle this. And then I just think it's quite ironic that Duke's this like prim and proper engine, and he might have a backstory where he was a bit rubbish.
Yeah, where he doesn't want to talk about it.
Just quickly with Two-Faced Tarts just asked about regaging and stuff. I feel like obviously Duke would have been built to the 2'3" of the Mid-Sodor, and I imagine the coaching stock they would have ordered from the companies as 2'3" gauge. I don't think they would have. Well, I don't think there would have been much second-hand stock available in the 1880s. Everyone was starting off. They'd go straight to the builders.
Good point, like Luke. Yeah, good point. I have to admit, when you said about that Duke being built to 2'3", I've always imagined that if there was any little bit of dual track at Festinio, it was literally just down the cob, run it up and down. Yes, it works. Right, send it, go.
Yeah.
off it went to Sodor with a don't send it back if it goes wrong kind of thing.
See, and Golden Egan said about Duke being the first engine on the line. Oh, sorry. I think you've got a bit of an audio delay, Ryan. So like when I'm speaking, you're silent, and then it starts up. It's a shame. It's a bit of a bugger. Oh, vindication, Ben. The cob was dual gauge at one point.
Was it?
Heisler in the chat, who's
right, yeah.
I think he said he was a Welsh Highland volunteer. From what I've grasped, Stuart saying it's dual gauge.
I noticed, actually, just to quickly go back and answer it quickly, Golden Eagle Studios and Productions, in regards to the Ravenglass and Arlesdale Railway, you guys know of a section of 15-inch gauge track that was made dual to share with either standard or 3/4. Well, that was actually standard gauge.
Yeah,
it ran up as far as the quarry. It ran up as far as Mirthwaite crushing plant, and it was so they didn't have to unload from 15-inch into the standard wagons in the yard of Ravenglass, and it lasted until the 50s.
I've got some pictures here of the loco that ran the line. It was a little Kerr Stewart 060 diesel.
It was, and we had it back at Ravenglass when I used to volunteer there. It came. We had a special year, and it actually was parked on the car park right up next to the camping coaches. And it resides at Foxfield Railway near Stoke-on-Trent. But I don't know if it's a runner. I have a sneaking suspicion.
I don't think it is. It's not. There's a lot of interesting stuff about it. Also from Golden Eagle, asking, like you're saying, Awdry says that Duke was the first engine on the Mid-Sodor, yet the Mid-Sodor took over from a tramway that already had steam locomotives as early as 1866. Now, the thing is, Duke was the first ever Mid-Sodor locomotive built and bought and owned by the company. So he was definitely the first engine of the Mid-Sodor.
Yeah. The other ones were contract.
Well, yeah, you can say that. Like the steam locomotives prior to that could have already have been condemned by the not condemned, but sold off or anything. There's multiple things that could have happened, but I feel like when the Mid-Sodor opened properly in 1880, Duke was the only engine by then. So they would have probably sold off the previous tram engines or, sheeted and stored them. Because obviously Tim is one of the Rev's locos for the Mid-Sodor, which does have tram skirts on the side, but it's number 7, I believe. So that could be one of those original tram locos just a few years later down the line. Put back into service.
So do we think, like, if anyone said was talking to Duke and was like, oh yeah, I've been reading up on the Festiniog about an engine called Mountaineer. Do you think like Duke got like a nervous twitch? Don't mention it. Don't mention it.
Heisler, it was horse-drawn originally, but the Rev does. I can't remember if he outright says it. He definitely alludes to the tramway that became the Mid-Sodor. The Mid-Sodor did have steam traction at first.
This is the book you mentioned earlier to me, Ryan.
So I mean, right? If you're into like if you're got any kind of interest in the Skarloey Railway, and you want to learn a bit more about folklore and all sorts of other things, Would thoroughly recommend this book. It's called Festinio of Fables. You can get it on Amazon right now, amazon.co.uk right now. I think it's only about £5. There's a copy available for £5.
No, it's about five.
Otherwise, just look at Abe Books. Do a Google search. It's generally readily available. However, there is an absolute. They actually did a small tribute to the Reverend Awdry stuff.
Oh, lovely.
Which is more of a parody than anything else.
Oh, is this the one with Linda?
Don't spoil it, Luke. Don't spoil it, mate. Let me just.
I hope it's.
Ah, here we go. There's it. Yep. Yeah, well, that's the bit. And then I've lost it. 52 seconds. Yeah, it's the one with Linda. Yeah, it's the one with Linda. Hold on.
I love it. It's great. Read it, please.
It's a story called Funny Old Engines. It's a story called The Funny Old Engines, right? Now, first story is called Bring On the Dancing Girls. This is when the Penryn engines, Linda and Blanche, first come to the railway. And the second story has. Right, so the clergyman's mentioned in it. Second story is Benefit the Clergy. And now, in the events of the Benefit the Clergy, first story, Merlin Emrys is asked to take care of the 2 new female engines, which he does. Well, he does with Linda. With Blanche. Yeah, Blanche it is. Right. Let's see here. Right. Allow me to read to you here, guys. Taliesin was left in the works. Linda went to see him often. Sometimes Meriden came too. Poor Tal, he said, you do look a mess with bits of you all over the writing shop floor. But I feel quite jealous because you have Linda to keep you company. Never mind, said Linda. My sister told her all about the men in the place. This pleased Meriden very much, and when Blanche arrived, he was most attentive. What a nice, big, strong engine you are, she said. Would you like to come out double-heading with me? So they went out together, and they got on splendidly. Except one time, went to a party at the thin civil engineer's house. They drank a 9-gallon barrel of his cider, and between them, they drank a 9-gallon barrel of cider between them, and rolled home ever so late. Where did you get to last night? asked Meriden's driver in the morning. My mother was sitting up until 2 o'clock in the morning to open the crossing gates for you. That morning, the clergyman came to see the engines again and met Linda in the yard. She whispered, Did you say fitting rings? You'd better take your overalls, because Meriden wants you to fit a new ring on Blanche. The clergyman went to the engine shed and did as he was asked. When he came out, all the other engines blew their whistles until they had no more steam left. Hearing a noise in the engine shed, Meriden's driver ran to see what it was. He found Meriden and Blanche wrapped in steam with their safety valves lifting like anything. Funny, he said. I wonder what's been happening here. But Meriden and Blanche winked at each other and said nothing. And then 9 months later, we get Baby
Brittlemark.
Basically, Baby Brittlemark, yeah. Basically, Meriden Emrys knocked up Blanche and gave us Baby Brittlemark.
I read that.
Again, thoroughly recommended. It's a brilliant book. There's some really funny stories in it. It's well worth a read. Available on Amazon. just a fantastic set of books. It's a fantastic book. And I don't know if any other railway has done it. I mean, the TR's got Railway Adventure, Festiniog Fables, and it is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I've recommended it to folk for years, and it's well worth the read.
Yeah, someone shared it into one of the narrow gauge. I think it was one of the TR groups on Facebook. Someone shared the story in just as a laugh, and I remember reading it and just be like, "What the hell?" No, I might try and have a look for the full book.
Oh no, I would definitely recommend it, man. I mean, I wish other railways would do. I mean, like, you could get some brilliant. I mean, I don't know what stuff you can get with like the TR or what have you, but this book's got folklore. I mean, was there not a story years ago where there was meant to be a ghost train in the TR? Folk were. I think it was one night. Folk were abseiling down Dogog Viaduct, and next thing they hear this sound of an engine going by. Turns out it was some guy who built a makeshift trolley to get down to the pub in Cowan. Just got. I think he got on like Abergynolwyn or Quarry.
In the I think it's 60 years of volunteering. It mentions one of the other guys. One night they did a hideout to try and catch this person, and they never actually caught who it was. But it did stop after that.
There's a great little story I've heard, which is a bunch of a few of the volunteers got a little bit tipsy, and one night they went to Pendray. They fired up Midlander, drove it down to Wharf, turned it on the wagon turntable, went for a joyride up the line, and dumped it at Pendray. And then the next day, the crews, people coming in to light up the engines, just kind of looked at Midland and went, "Hang on, that's turned around overnight. What's happening here?"
I'm sure it wasn't that way, right?
Yeah, because Midlander and Douglas are the only locos that can fit on the wagon turntables, so you can spin them around as much as you want. No, there's a lot of fun little mini stories. Oh, that's great. So yeah, other mid-Sodor-y stuff.
Well, this was another thing that Ben and I discussed, was after seeing how long the TR looked on the Skarloey looked on a map. Wilbert states that the mid-Sodor is 25 miles. Measured it on the maps. On the maps, it comes to about 29. It's fairly close-ish sort of thing. But what I do scratch my head at is the timing he has for trains on the mid-Sodor. Ben, have you got any of them to reference, or Ryan?
Funny enough, you were looking at. I haven't got my hard drive with me, my external hard drive, but I have got my notebook, which I was making all my calculations in when I was doing your timetable. And of course, as I said at the start of the chat, I was working off the average speed for the trains being about 10 or 11 mile an hour. So we looked at the Fez timetables,
Welsh Island,
and the Welsh Island, and they're all roughly around 10.4 to 11.5 miles mile per hour average. Wilbert states, because of course we were looking at mileage and things and times it takes, Wilbert states that the boat train, which only has 2 stops, does the 25 miles in an impressive time of 1.25 hours. Well, works out at an average speed of 20 mile an hour. Average speed of 20 mile an hour. So you're looking at the top speed in certain places must have been knocking on nearly 30 mile an hour for a George England. And given the fact that you're running through a mountainous section as well, so there'll be some sharp curvature, and climbing and then descending as well. I can be a little bit sort of gung-ho, but I don't think I'd want to hang on to one of them at that speed. But it's funny that he mentions the horse and cart, which is the pickup goods on the mid-Sodor, took 2.5 hours for the 25 miles, which actually obviously works out at 10 mile an hour average. So yeah, I think his timings were a little bit out on that one. The picnic itself, he mentions about the picnic, and that's an hour and 40. That's still 15 mile an hour average speed. So it doesn't take into account your acceleration or deceleration. So yeah, it's your top speeds were a lot higher to get that average. So yeah, poor Reverend didn't get them quite right.
Well, he did pretty well with everything else.
Oh, he did. Oh, yeah, not knocking it. I mean, it's interesting that he put that in, but yeah, we're just working out the average speed. It's like, scratch my head at that
one. What Heisler's saying here, operations being split. I very much feel like the mountain road section would probably be a case of splitting operations. So you've got like one section, which is you've got Alesborough to Arlesdale, and then you'd probably have another service which would be Arlesdale all the way to King Horry's Bridge. And I imagine that's probably how it would work. Because the Welsh road, the mountain road's a lot more grueling. But didn't the Rev also say you've got like you do have through trains, but I can imagine there being a split service.
I mean, to be fair, Luke, you can argue that's what was being shown in the story Bulldog, because he turns and says, "Tomorrow you'll learn the mountain road."
Exactly.
It's no hint that he starts anywhere else other than Arlesdale at the shed.
It's really weird in Bulldog with Stanley in the back of the shed. Like, there's the whole kind of like timeline with Stanley's really one thing. Like, considering the rest of the Rev stuff, it's really a bit all over the place, because you've got, Falcon at the time was built in 1908, so I imagine Bulldog set around that 1908, 1909, because he's learning the route still.
But Stanley being an ex-World War I Baldwin,
who wasn't
have to be 1919.
Exactly, he wasn't at the railway until 1919. There's essentially 10 years there. But also, even in Grandpuff and the way that Stuart and Falcon don't know him, if you know what I mean. Like, Stuart, because he arrives in 1921, if Stanley had been decommissioned before that, which I don't think he was, because I'm pretty sure it's a decent amount of time before Stanley's put as the pumping engine. It's kind of like, how do they not know who Stanley is? And it's one of those.
Given the time these engines were built to last, I mean, would it be unrealistic for it to run out of life within a year or two? I mean, Baldwin's were only built to last about 3 weeks.
Yeah,
the battle when they were shipped out to France and that.
Yeah, it is one of those.
I mean, there was none reliable machines when they actually came to the British Isles.
I think it was it the Ashover Light Railway had, was it 2 of them, Peggy and Joan, and there's a few photographs of them on the side.
No,
I've got an Ashover one here for you to look at now.
No,
yeah, it's a Hummy, that one. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those things where it's kind of like Stanley would need to be whacked behind that shed pretty damn quickly for Stuart and Falcon to not really know him or anything.
It's a fact also they've never even noticed him. How many times they've gone back and gone, oh, there's an engine there.
Well, and someone was saying about, he's still behind our sheds. Slightly later on, the Rev never specified a date, but Stanley was removed from behind the sheds and moved into the Casnaharwin mine. The Casnaharwin mine as a pumping engine to, pump out water from the mine. And in late 1946, Stanley failed, which flooded the mine, which forced the mid-Sodor to close. So you can peg down Duke being lost and the mid-Sodor closing to Stanley if you wanted.
Yeah.
A little bit of revenge.
I will have my revenge. And of course, that very much mirrors the Fez, doesn't it? There's a year difference? Is it 46 that the Fez shut?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was Tom.
Yeah, I thought
Because there's that cracking picture that I found online of Princess, I think it is, with empties with one of the last trains, and I just went, and there's Duke on the mid-Sodor. It's just perfect shot. And it was only the other week that I'm kind of all new to this in a way, but I discovered I want to say Gennardwen, but it's not Gennardwen. The tunnel, which is the inspiration for where the illustration.
Garland.
That's the one, yeah. I know it's not where the actual Linda's Leap took place that is the basis for Bulldog, but it's the illustration of one of the tunnels on the mountain road, which is essentially the Fez. But I also do think with how you have Casney How in mind as a spur off the line, that does remind me of the Corris with like Aberlourpenny, and there's a few other ones on the Corris where you have branches off for a slate quarry. And I've always thought that's and that's my reasoning for why I'm working on some ex-Corris slate wagons, which will be ex-mid-Sodor, which the Skarloey have bought after the closure.
Yeah, and there's this is just like, because you're saying about buying up stock, it's just another little tidbit people might not realise is that Stewart and Falcon didn't go directly to the Skarloey. They were bought up by the Peel Godred Power Company, or whatever the proper name is.
For those who heard my little story I read on the 12th, that was my little epilogue there, was where Think Control was having a phone call to someone at the just closed mid-Sodor to be told that sadly the two engines that they were hoping to buy for the Skarloey Railway have just been sold, because they'd just been sold to the Sodor Aluminium Company.
That's the aluminium company, because they were used in the construction of the power plant at Peel Godred.
I think I'm now getting quite into this writing stories. I might try and write a story at the plant, at the aluminium works, about Stewart and Falcon in their adventures between mid-Sodor.
So in the railway series, Tom.
Oh, you've already beat me to it then. Damn.
No, I'm saying submit to the ERS team. I'm saying.
Say that again.
Write them and submit them to the ERS.
Oh, sorry. I see. Right, sorry. I thought you said that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
For us, I've not.
Enjoying your cornettos.
Yeah, pretty much.
I really want one now.
Strange thing, whenever I have one, I can't just have one. I've only have two, at least.
I think it's like, can't have two. I've had 5.
Oh, don't get started on Proteus. Don't get started on Proteus. Not here.
Hold on. Did somebody say? That's where I start with a nervous twitch. Then Luke, what? What?
Proteus, no.
Did somebody say smudger? I start. I can't. Like gremlins. It's like if you give a gremlin water, don't do it to me, please.
Or feed it after midnight. Ryan, it was. I think this might be the aircraft that you were on about that hit Snowdon. In 1952, there was an Avro Anson which collided near Clogwin in low cloud. It killed 3 of the crew.
Yeah, that would have.
There was more. Railway manager considered it unsafe for the trains to descend, and 120 passengers and railway staff were stranded overnight in the Summit Station building.
Oh my lord!
Yeah. It was en route from RAF Aldergrove in County Antrim to collect radio spares from RAF Clandor in the Vale of Glamorgan. The aircraft was flying in cloud below safety altitude when it struck the mountain. On impact, the aircraft bounced up the steep slope onto the track of the Snowdon Mountain Railway, where it burned out, blocking the line, while 2 trains were at the Summit Station. Although the wreckage was cleared from the track later in the day, the wind speed had then increased to the point where the railway manager considered it unsafe for the trains to descend, and 120 passengers and railway staff were stranded overnight in the Summit station. As a result of railway maintenance work, there is no trace of wreckage where the aircraft burnt out. However, a few pieces of the aircraft have been found on the steep slope below the track. And that snippet comes from Aircraft Wrecks, the Walker's Guide.
Listen, so
Let's see. Educational content here.
yeah, so on Twitter we had a question from Welshway04, and saying, do you think the models on the mid-Sodor layout were engines Awdry intended to work on the mid-Sodor within the Railway Series universe, or just engines for the layout? Because in book 25, all the engine names had something to do with the locomotive or the builders, like Falcon and Stewart, based on the Hughes Falcon and Kerr Stewart builders. And while the other names he gave to locos just seemed to be out of nowhere, I definitely, in the Island of Sodor, he does specify in 1930, I think it's 1936, the remaining locomotives were sold off. So, and then it was just Duke, Falcon, and Stewart left running the line, 36 to 47. But before that, I do very much think that you've got the other locos that were on his layout. I think if you want to fill in the gaps yourself, use his layout ones, because it's his characters. Even if they've not appeared in any other media.
See that caption that you've just read there from iOS Luke, that straight away I just think of the chorus, because you had chorus 1, 2, and 3. The current number 3 was the third, although it has been said that number 3 has a lot of number 1 in it.
Yeah, one of the, with Sir Hayden.
Number 3's got a lot of number 2.
Yeah, it's number 2. Yeah, one of the frames is from number 2 in number 3, and someone was doing work to the frames and they were very confused when something wasn't lining up because the 2 frames are different.
Very handy.
Basically, Frankenstein's monster.
So you have to admit, one of the models does look very generic. That's the brown one that you see in some of the photographs at the back.
The mine.
To be fair, yeah, you could look at it, and to be quite honest, if you said to somebody that it worked in a little mine in France, Spain, Italy, Germany, or even over here, it would pass because of what it was. And I wonder if, because of what was available, that's what Wilbert got hold of. Maybe not necessarily they might have been the ones he wanted, but at least he could have plenty of things running, and you've got a nice mixture. There's some visuals to always look at.
French Decourville locos with the cab taken off, which I think was deliberate by him to make it look less French.
Yeah, right. I did wonder, because you can see the lamp in front of the chimney, and it was like, it's the lamp itself, and I'm like...
One of them is, because he had 2, I'm pretty sure. He had 2 of those little mine engines. One of them is in the study at the Telechlim, and I am pretty sure it had the number 9, like a transfer on it. So he intended to have it in the mid-Sodor numbering scheme at least.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for the other one, because that's I think with the layout, which is with Chris Awdry.
Yeah.
It used to be on display at Cadeby, didn't it? At Teddy Boston's place.
And sadly, he passed away, and that shut down. That's a shame. But it's interesting, just like the locos on his layout, because there's another Falcon there, Albert.
Oh,
yeah.
And there's a Dole Gok model, isn't there?
People are saying, "Oh, is that just Rheneas's model?" But I've looked at it in the box, and it definitely doesn't have buffers. So I don't think it's a Rheneas model. So it's a Fletcher Jennings loco like Dole Gok, but I do not believe it's meant to be Dolgok / Rheneas. And I'd like to see it further in. Yeah, so like there's another Falcon called Albert. There was a Skylark on there as well, which is Jim, I think, number 6. Tim is the
Jim, the Skylark was actually out of our invention. We were not sure. We just took a punt on it. It's more a tribute than anything else because there was a Skylark 2'3" up at the Capleton in Macrahanish, which is other 2'3" gauge lines in the country. An engine called Princess, which sadly came to a very sad end because of negligence by the driver. He let her run dry and basically melted the firebox crown.
Oh, that's fun.
That's really big Jim on.
So, I see, because I'm actually looking here. Jim was one of the very kits, wasn't he? I'm just looked at the model now. Wasn't actually a Skylark.
I mean, like people have said, "Oh, you shouldn't." I mean, oh no, it wasn't a Skylark at all. I don't care. It was a basis which we used for our version of the character.
I
didn't actually know exactly what it was.
Yeah, it's just one of the Pico Vera kits, but I can see Skylark-ish. I like Skylark as a thing because even if it's based on Campbelltown, Snail Beach, which is what the Mid-Sodor Loco sheds are based on, they had a Skylark as well, so you could easily go down that route as well. I do like Skylarks. I always forget how big they are, though.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was Adam Hamilton had got one for his layout, and he put it up against one of the other engines, and it basically towered above it. It was so big by comparison.
I do like the fact Mid-Sodor have
There again, though, by comparison to the engine, it was dinky.
Yeah, no, there's a load of different just little locos that are with them.
Shame we didn't have a Hunslet quarry engine because I really love them.
Oh yeah, Quarry Hunslets, I love them. I'm really surprised that hasn't actually ever been any Quarry Hunslets in the Railway series, especially at the time. Like, they're such an iconic loco. You'd think one would creep the way in. Yeah, no, I do think like if you're going to expand on the Mid-Sodor locos, use Awdry's models as a base, but obviously you can have pretty free range with it. Just don't start going, this is it, if you know what I mean, because no one knows what this is it, if you know what I mean.
I mean, I'm already thinking one day I'd like to do Mid-Sodor, but I've already decided I would just stick to the book. That's just my choice. I would just have Duke, Falcon, Stuart, and Stanley.
Also at Heisler, I'm talking about the Alice class, like the most, I'd say the most known Quarry Hunslet.
Yeah, Alice class. Then you had the Port class, which was slightly different in shape. Yeah. I have a feeling the wheelbase were all the same on them, though, weren't they?
I think so. It was mainly above running board where the differences.
Yeah, because I've driven one of them. I've driven Irish Mail.
Was that at
West Lancs West Lancs Railway? Yeah, absolutely superb bunch of guys there.
Yeah, one day I just went one Sunday. I was walking around with my camera. The loco was doing the run around. I was doing a nice panning shot, and it just stopped next to me. And the driver went, "Have you got a high vis?" I was like, "No, not on me." He said, "Here, have one. You can go walk around. Like, you can walk the whole line, do what you want." So it was really nice.
Yeah, great bunch there. Absolute great bunch. Fingers crossed they'll get the extension.
Yeah, that'd be really good for him.
Because they've been doing a lot of work in the station area and the turntable in there and everything. So there's something so short. I mean, there's a lot to see. Yeah, definitely. And as I say, they're a really good bunch. And they've got Sybil there as well, which is getting close to being finished as well, which is another, although not a quarry Hunslet, was another engine that worked in the Welsh quarries. They had Stanhope there as well. I've had the joy of actually firing and driving Stanhope as well. Which is now at Apedale, I think it is.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, near Stoke-on-Trent. Oh, the last place I saw it at, anyway. But maybe, I'd like to think perhaps, Will would have had one if he could have got a model of one, perhaps. So.
Yeah.
Right. Well. Covered a lot of base there.
I think we have. So hopefully, things will get back to normal to some point, soon. And I do hope that the, Heritage Railways, but in particular, obviously, we're talking about, narrow gauge and things. I hope they do get something out of the season if possible.
It's a shame. It's very good for like the Talaclan have managed to raise the money they needed, and they're still raising for any extra. And just give to your railways if you can. Obviously, put yourself and your families first in this trying time. But if you do find yourself with a little bit extra that you wouldn't mind putting to some, give it to your local line if they're doing the fundraiser or one of your favourites. So we've all got something to go back to when it's done. Because I can see, sadly, a few of the smaller ones, the Llangollen even potentially kicking the bucket during this.
Yeah, I'm staying positive.
I think this COVID thing's going to go on for a while longer.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while, yeah.
Well, you're going to have issues with, even if they opened, you're going to have issues with social distancing on coaches, so you're reducing the revenue straight away.
Unless you run open wagons, Tom.
Yeah.
Five to an open wagon, get a few. Interesting.
We've got some questions in the chat or comments. I think I do find that the mid-Sodor quite. Oh dear, hold on. Oh, it's all happening now. Two-phase chart productions. I do find the mid-Sodor quite fascinating, as it's arguably a lot more obscure than the Skarloey, but then a lot less so than the Culdee Fell. Yeah, I like it because, well, I think in a way because Awdry have built up this world. It's sort of like one of the last pieces in Sodor to sort of be revealed, sort of thing. And I think clearly, he clearly had a soft spot for it from the fact that he built a layout. I just wish he got round to building his Skarloey layout, which he never got round to. He did the plans for it, but never got to make it.
I'm just someone asked about the Elsbridge viaduct, and that
how long it is?
Yeah, I don't think it's outright stated, but it says the bridge was designed by Mr. Michael Kirk of Cathedral Chambers, Sodor, who, on top of that suggestion, based the design on that of I.K. Brunel for the Great Western Railway at Maidenhead. And that's kind of, it's saying it was completed in 1925 and has since needed only minimal maintenance, thus giving excellent testimony to the qualities of Falkwas. But it doesn't really go much into that. I can't remember where it is, but I'm sure I remember reading somewhere that it is actually shorter than the Maidenhead viaduct. But I don't take my word for it because I can't remember where I read that. So I'm not going to claim that that's, correct. But I think from what I remember, I think it's shorter. I couldn't tell you how long.
I've just worked out how we can post on the screen questions because there's one for Ryan here from
Right at
Hyde.
the end.
There you go, Ryan. There's a question for you there. In the SIF blog post about Duke, why does it say preservation bottom works having?
Right, I think I might have been. I recall years ago reading something. I think it was either Railway Magazine or Steam Railway. What do you call them again? With the Fistini or getting a contract to build stuff for Disneyland. I don't know if I ever came to mean, but I've been trawling through the various railway magazines from the time, and I can't find it again. So I might need to withdraw that. I might need to withdraw that, but I don't think anything actually was built. Just maybe me getting the wrong end of the stick, but yeah, can't really buy them.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've sort of covered the.
I was just having a quick look through the chat there to see if there's any other questions.
If there's anything, let me just see if there's any. Yeah, good point. Any questions?
Yeah, if anyone does have any last questions, pop them in the chat.
Now is your time.
But yeah, no, it's been a fun little stream. Shame we lost Andrew so early on.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask him about firing the engines. I wanted to, I've there's a friend of mine at East Lancs who also is a volunteer at the TR, and he was basically describing what it's like firing each of the engines, and he just referred to how number 3 was awkward, and I was just like, brilliant, I love it because it's like. But then right. I know you're going to say, Luke, you fired number 3 and it was fine.
Yeah, number 3 is one of those. Weirdly, is a very, from what I've heard, like you can have really good days on it or really bad days on it. I've not worked on Talachlin yet because that went out of service just before I joined the loco department. But all the other engines, the personalities that you read in the books shine through so much on the actual engines. Like Dolgok's a very easy steamer, very, quite well. There was an interesting period where the Draincock operation on the right hand side, on the driver's side cylinder, the linkage sheared off during operation one day, so it was leaking steam out of one side the whole day, but it still carried on just fine. Like very much in that style. Like I say, Sir Hayden can be brilliant some days, but also awkward. And there was a period where every day it went out, it broke one of the air pumps for the brakes. It kept breaking them. Edward Thomas is very, very easy to get on with. It will burn anything you put in that firebox and is very agreeable, a bit like Peter Sam. Douglas will blow off steam if you look at it funny. And rock and roll definitely stands true. And I imagine Ivo Hugh will be quite like Tom Roll, which is you've got a lot of power, a lot of steam, not big enough wheels, and slips a lot. So I feel like Ivo Hugh, if he was expanded on more, would be quite energetic, but has nowhere to put that power.
Yeah,
too powerful for his own good.
And I mean,
sorry, Ryan. Carry on.
Go on, Ryan.
No, I'm just saying, like Tom Roll is easily the least favourite of the TR locos, just purely on account of the fact I just don't like how boxy it is, and the fact that they've never taken a risk with it in terms of putting in another livery. I mean, our Doug actually did a mock-up of it in Caledonian Blue, and it looks stunning.
I'm going to break your heart,
it's
Ryan.
Terrible. Put in another livery.
The chap that one of the firemen who does a lot of the painting, he works for Heritage Painting, Andrew Thomas, was telling me the repaint it's just had, they pitched a lovely midnight blue with red lining, and they were adamant on doing it, but sadly the powers that be were like, no, we want it in the green again, and it would have been gorgeous.
Oh.
It's a lot. I feel like a lot of the volunteers want
the local it's service, and it's never been out of green.
I know.
Yeah.
Every other engine is different. Every other engine was either been. I mean, Talachlin has been. It's been green. It's been black. It's been red.
It's been covered in muck.
And
There's what?
Covered in muck.
there's some in the Taliclin
Covered
group
in muck. Yeah.
photos from the 90s of it in where it's been like weathered to look filthy with Taliclin written on the side of it, which actually looked quite fetching like that.
I'd love to see. There's one livery that they've not put Taliclin in, which is the second livery it wore pre-preservation, which is the one that it wore for the rest of its working life. They've not put that because the current livery is what is the closest estimation to Taliclin's first livery, and they've not done the next one, which I hope we do see it in at some point, because then we've done everything in preservation. TR standard green, the LNWR black. Original livery, and then you want your other one, and they've done it in the dirtied up black 40s style where they just like sloshed a load of muck on it for a photo charter.
I want number 2 in the Atlas green.
Yeah,
Atlas green. I really like that. I tell you what, Ryan's joined mine and Ben's group about number 7 not being our favourite one, because we've discussed it about saying number 7's not quite off.
I'm biased. I love all the engines, but number 7's definitely.
It's a good logo, but it means it's a logo. But at the same time, though, it's just there's nothing really interesting about it, unless you go back to his days when Bord Namona. But it's I don't know. I mean, just put in different with it. I mean, put it in blue. Put it in blue for a wee while. Put it in a different colour. Just mix it up a bit.
I think the midnight blue.
I mean, it's just the main steam one.
I suppose we are spoiled.
Another thing that crossed my mind as well.
Go on, man.
Another thing that crossed my mind as well. You ever noticed right, the TR diesels? You've got the 2 that have actually been put into the books. Number 5 and number 9. Well, number 9 is a passing mention. You ever know the number? Was it Merseyside and Bryn Eglis? Never actually made it into the books, and they're the 2 engines that have been furloughed, actually, I should say. They've actually been removed from TR altogether.
Yeah,
they've got rid of a number, haven't they?
Yeah, they were a bit too weak, sadly, for what was needed. Number 5 and 9 are really.
No, but it's kind of weird because, like, I mean, like Merseyside was there when Chris Awdry was writing the books. But yeah, it was never actually featured in any of the books. That's kind of weird.
I think it's also, I kind of find it weird that Fred was never kind of brought up again. You know, he was only in that one passing mention. You could have easily had him in the illustration. You could have had a little thing in there, and it's a shame that wasn't expanded on.
Yeah.
If there were any new Railway Series books now, I'd love to see number 11 and 12, St. Cadfan and Tracoon, adapted into that, because they used to work at RNAD base, which was run by the MOD, and you could tie that into the MOD base up at the quarry. You could have them being locos bought from them.
Just like talk about sort of like things not.
We actually based an ERS character on those. One of the characters gave my twin or no? I think we did. So I mean, if I did, I can't remember. I've not read the extended Railway Series for quite a while, but I can remember. Remember we retconned one of the bases to that from what Clay initially had in mind, but yeah.
Because what I could see doing is Awdry describes the Black Beetle loco up at the quarry. I can imagine give it to about like the 80s or something, that kicks its bucket, and they bring in 2 Bagley diesels to do the work, and then the base, similar to Arnad Tracoon, gets decommissioned and they sell them to the Skarloey, because the difference with 11 and 12 to 5 and 9, they can do passenger work because they're strong and they're fast. So it'd be interesting to see passenger diesel locos.
I think when you talk about things that Christopher Awdry sort of missed out, or maybe missed opportunity with certain characters, what I can't forgive him for is Great Little Engines. It's the first Skarloey books, featuring Skarloey engines since Duke the Lost Engine. Duke's in it, and he spends the time in the works. I wanted to see Duke on the Skarloey, and he has no tethering for New Little Engine as well. There we go.
It's a bugger. It's a real missed opportunity because it would be interesting, just kind of like a book of him adjusting to working life again. Like catching up and being on the Skarloey.
I'd love to like interaction between Duke and Skarloey and Rheneas. They're old engines. I'd love to Duke telling about experiences on the mid Sodor, and
it'd be quite funny to see Duke meet two engines that are older than him, because he's not used to that.
No, that's a very good point. Yeah.
He's used to being the oldest, and suddenly you've got Skarloey and Rheneas who are 30 years, 20, sorry.
15.
Yeah,
No.
well, yeah.
Yeah, Skarloey goes all sinister and he goes, Duke, I'm the famous old engine. Just remember that. I'm the famous old engine. A little question here, I just want to highlight here. I'd love to see Christopher Awdry's books be covered in a future Awdry Corner. They will be, and I can assure you Stuart will be on the show as well. I can hear his voice now. Let's have a just scroll through some more comments. Luke, anyone's welcome to do this one. One last thing, has anyone ever put the theory out there that Henry was just an extended C1 Atlantic locomotive, being that they had a driving wheel?
See, the thing with that is that would be a perfectly fine locomotive, and Henry was not that. Henry's firebox was squashed and awful.
Henry's just awful.
Yeah, he'll definitely have like Atlantic kind of design cues, because obviously like Gresley was always designing Pacific from the start, and there are quite a few. There's a brilliant like whole written out by Sean O'Connor and Simon Martin on the old Peg and Sean real life site, which is going back up. It's going back up on SIF, isn't it, Ryan?
Was that
the real live site?
on Martin's site? Actually, back up. It's actually back up under its own steam. It's initially we were going to do an update on it when we were doing the fan site, but Martin's actually found a new host, so it's went back up in its 2000 in all its 2003 HTML glory. So it's basically the same site as what it was there before. So it's regained its independence, and we're doing like.
Can't wait to see the MS Paint face.
And it's back up. It's back up. I mean, I'll find it there for you.
Yeah, but no, and they did a lovely kind of article about. It was more about Gordon, but it explores Gresley's designs from the final A1 design, and they're all very Henry looking. If you squashed one of those designs a bit, made the firebox smaller, you've got Henry. So he's less Atlantic and more I nearly swore bad A1.
I have to say though, I think I do prefer Luke and Stuart's theory. Move on.
Oh, do you want me to go over it?
Go on in brief, you can do.
Right. So tying to the Arlesdale Railway, River Esk and Rex were designed by a chap called Henry Greenlee. And they're Paxman locos. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. Henry Greenlee made a lot of 15-inch locos that worked on the Ravenglass. He was a close friend of Nigel Gresley and used to base a lot of his loco designs on Gresley's designs. 1919, which is when Henry was built, they would have been, or Gresley would have been coming up with a Pacific. Henry Greenlee already had a loco out. That was a Pacific.
There's a friend of mine who's involved with a gigantic locomotive company building a replica of it.
Oh, wonderful. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. He's been trying to fundraise for it and whatever. They actually do have bits built for it as well. So I think we've got some of the frames for the tender. I don't think for the loco itself, but I think the tender's progressing quite well. And axle boxes and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's coming along slow and steady, but yeah, there's lots to do yet. So, sorry to interrupt, Luke, but yeah, carry on.
Don't worry, that's really good to hear though. So yeah, mine and Stuart's crackpot theory is that Henry Greenley and Nigel Gresley, you know, the mates, Greenley starts to sketch up a Pacific design, and he has his Pacifics already. And, you know, him and Gresley are talking about it and pitching ideas to each other, and he leaves some of his drawings overnight at Doncaster Works, you know, and then the next day they come back and they've gone. Gresley's drawings are still there, but Henry Greenley's his drawings are gone. You know, they didn't have any measurements on them, you know, so these other loco built Henry to standard gauge, and then they've realized this was for a 15-inch gauge loco. No wonder he's so utterly rubbish, because our thing is like, oh, they've built a 15-inch gauge loco exactly the same to a standard gauge size.
It's funny because Colossus and I think it's Awdry Brocklebank, which was the second one built, ended up being the first Rivermite, which was had a powered tender as well, so it looked like River-esque, and it was terrible in that condition as well. But what was funny is they spent a lot of the time double heading together as well.
So that's our crackpot theory, is that Henry is actually a 15-inch gauge loco sized up, and it works with as I say, Gresley and Greenley, because they were mates, and they went back and forth with each other. And if you're stealing drawings, you just got to swipe the first ones you see that look vaguely right.
Yeah, we've not seen that before. We'll have that. No, I like that. Can I
build it, and then they fob it off to top them, and it also works because Henry is a green engine, and he was designed by Henry Greenley.
You've just blown the internet, Luke.
It's by no means the correct answer, but I find it very fun. I think you need to have fun with these kind of things.
Absolutely. There isn't any sort of, you know, there isn't a definitive, because the person that created it is no longer here. So, you know, lots of things are open to interpretation. I just have to make a point. If anyone didn't join us from the beginning, I think we better just make a point here that Benny's wearing his bib and braces because he's a fireman and a driver. And I have to say this because he's like this, and your sleeve is filthy. Like, it's black. If anybody looks, they're going to go, oh dear, he doesn't wash.
Well, no, it wasn't that. It was during lockdown. I just thought, for a laugh, I'd wear it tonight. But I thought I haven't worn it since the East Lancs Gala, which Luke visited and was at, and I was just making sure it was fitted. It fitted still, which it does, which is great. So that, I just for a laugh as well, because it was Awdry Con. I just thought it was fitting to wear it. Excuse the pun.
We have a question we missed here. Just a little interesting one here. Put that one up.
Oh God, yeah, Cronk and Harwick. It was narrow gauge, and it existed very, very briefly. I don't think it was ever loco hauled. As far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure it was always horse-drawn.
The one that's marked on the maps.
It's closed right at the very top.
Yeah, the one that was horse-drawn from the little quarry and never got any further beyond it. Oh, crikey. I've got the map in front of me. Why am I trying to guess?
Here we are. I've just popped it up. So this is from the section on
Droghan near Claghen, and the quarry is at Craigweir, just a little bit onwards.
Yeah, it says great poverty resulted from its final suppression, and that's about the caves and trade stuff. But by the 1850s, it hoped that a railway, the Cronk and Harwick, would provide honest work and help to solve the problem. A fine pier was built with stone quarried in the valley, and some 12 miles of track laid as far as Craigweir before the money ran out. The line was horse works, and though this and other quarries remained in production until the 50s, the railway had long since worn out. It was shown as still in being, but abandoned on the 1973 map. But it had actually been pulled up for scraps during World War II. In 1915 and again in 1940, a small naval base was established at Harwick, from which the north and west coast of the island were patrolled. Oh, that's something separate. But yeah, so the Cronk and Harwick was never a full-on railway. It was horse-drawn, mainly serving quarries, and it was, as I said, pulled up in World War II to get all the metal money.
Yeah.
scrap for
Yeah,
Spitfire.
that's what I was saying. Sorry, Golden Eagle. Yeah, it was always horse hauled, never loco driven or anything. It's an interesting one, and it's a shame it doesn't go more in on it.
I've always said it's a shame iOS came out sort of when it did. If it had been 10 years earlier, we might have got like a, subsequent more information sort of thing. But I was talking to someone who was a volunteer at the TR, who was quite friendly with Wilbert, and he was saying the big trouble that they had with iOS was that Kay and Ward were just like, "Who's this aimed at?" Because it's clearly something Wilbert really wanted to do, and I know a lot of us really, really appreciate it. But it's a case of it didn't. I think at the time, I don't know if it's. Well, I think it only had the one print run, hence why it's now so heavily sought after.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone wants my copy, £1,500.
You know what? This whole past week, Ben's been honestly saying to me, I might sell my iOS. I'm not joking. My stomach turns every time he says selling iOS. I'm like, oh, no, don't do it. No.
Well, you've got to buy it.
£1,500, Luke?
No.
I need money going towards tyre turning and the metalwork for a particular boiler, so...
But Luke,
£1,500 would get the wheels rolling at least.
Sell a kidney before you sell iOS.
See, Two-Faced Tart is saying one of the things about the iOS is the target audience now, and one of weirdly, I think if you were going to reprint it now, it'd be a small print run, but I feel that small print run would sell out because it's gained like a notoriety within the fandom, and I feel
like mythical thing, really.
And I feel even if you've got people who might not be interested in, say, the Railway series and the more TV series, I feel like the whole thing of this book that's not been available for years coming up again, people will latch onto it. I'd definitely buy one.
Where did you get your iOS copies from? Ryan, you've got a copy of iOS, haven't you?
Ryan.
iOS copy came from Amazon. I think it was run about when was it 2004?
And dare we ask?
Yeah, I got it in 2004. Got it in 2004. I think it only cost me. About 25 quid or something. Purely on account of that, it was probably somebody selling it who didn't know it had.
And the award goes to Ryan.
The best steal of the.
If we're doing that, okay, Ryan, you were playing. Is it Strike It Lucky from the 90s? Which was it? High, middle, or lower? High, middle, low. So
yeah. No, basically, I mean, we're all looking for it for ages. The first copy that came up was Jim Grattan. He managed to get it. I think he paid about 100 quid or something for it. Amazon, and at the time, Amazon had this thing where you set a price for what you would be willing to pay for the item, and if one you would automatically get, and you would automatically have first dibs on it. So I did that, and then the next thing I know, I come in from work or uni one afternoon, and this parcel's arrived, and then I pulled it out. Oh, it's just obviously on the Sodor book. I'm like, oh Christ almighty, I never even knew that. I never even knew that. Never even knew that was an order. So it was a nice surprise, and then I discovered on a 25. Get in.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, that's the bargain. Actually, I say it's the bargain of the century. I think the bargain was actually with you, Ryan, when I bought the Teddy Boston book for £1 off you. that was a good deal.
Yeah, that one. No, I seen it. I mean, when the Teddy Boston book, when you're talking, I was at Bone S, and I seen it for like £1, and I thought, so you know what, again, someone doesn't know what they have, so just bought it. So just then challenge me on it. So what can you do?
So
I really should have made more of a donation to the railway, but
right, Ryan cost £25 for iOS. I'll go next on this one. We'll go in order of price. I got mine about 2008. It was around the time that I first joined SIF, and I got mine off Abe Books, and it cost me £96. And at the time, I was like, "Oh my goodness, how much am I paying for a book?" As we will quickly find out,
in retrospect, very good.
Yeah. And now Ben, so mine was 2008. Ben, you got yours 11 years after publication. Is that right?
Yeah, I got mine 2000. Was when I actually got mine.
Okay, it's about 14 years, 13 years after.
There was a little shop in Ulverston that just opened up. At the time, I was collecting Biggles books because I was heavily into them. I went in and I had got a copy of the autobiography, Thomas the Tank Engine Man, by Brian Sibley. And there was a photograph in there of this iOS book. So I went in on the off chance, spoke to the guy who was there, and I said, "Oh, by any chance, can you see if you could get me a copy of this book?" And he looked at it and was like, "All right, okay." And about 2 weeks later, he phoned me up and he said, "There is a copy. It's 150 quid." And I went, "Yes." He said, "Yeah." And then he said he had done some research. He said, "Actually," he said, "a normal person wouldn't know about this book." He said, because it was a short print run. He didn't say how many copies, but mine came from Canada. There was a family who had emigrated to Canada, and obviously through his contacts, it was up for sale, and I just said yes. So I paid 150.
You did. Signed.
Mine signed by both of them, yeah, by Wilbur
George Awdry and Wilbur Awdry.
Yeah.
I will just say now, I think George Awdry is incredibly underappreciated by the fandom as a whole. Yeah. I never see anything about him, and it's heartbreaking because he put as much love and effort into Sodor as a thing as the Reverend did.
Absolutely. There's a section in Thomas the Tank Engine Man about the correspondence back and forth, and it's to do with Peel Godred and the aluminium works, and those ideas were George's, and then Wilbert was the one asking George, "Oh, well, could we do this? Could this?" And George is going, "Yeah, we can do." Because I think George worked at Kew in London,
in the library. Yeah,
no, George was very much more the economics side of Sodor and how the industry would work with it, whereas the Rev was very much working the railway side, and they worked on the history together. I don't care if I get blasted for saying this, but I think half the fandom, or even all of it, just needs to go and read Thomas the Tank Engine Man, because there's a lot of misconceptions about Wilbert being a very grumpy, crotchety old man from the 2 interviews when he was dying. To put it bluntly.
I'll tell you what, if anyone wants to hear Wilbert sort of because it is a shame in a way that the Thomas Tank Engine Man documentary was where he was a couple of years. He was that whole interview. He was bedridden, and they made it look like he was sitting up, and he was bedridden throughout the whole thing on that. And at the time, he was, he'd lost his brother, he'd lost his wife,
his best friend,
Teddy Boston, and the TV series was going in a direction he wasn't happy with. So you can understand it. But a very good interview with him is on, I think it's on SoundCloud with Brian Sibley, who wrote Thomas Tank Engine.
Brian Sibley. It's probably the most honest interview that I've had for the whole brand, in my opinion. Because in the very early days, she was very bright, very enthusiastic about it. She wasn't quite as robotic as what she became later on. She became very, very guarded later on with the whole thing. Very rarely, anytime she does, it's always the same kind of story she tells. I'm going to be quite interested to read her autobiography when it comes out, just to see how deeply she delves into things.
I didn't know she was doing one. I'm gonna.
She's only just mentioned it in passing today in a Facebook update. But yeah, I like Brit. I do really like Brit, but I can actually see the autobiography, I think she's going to be quite guarded with it, and what she says and what she. There's going to be a few things I'm going to read into it with, like, right, I kind of know differently there because other folk have said things, but yeah.
It's one of those things where I feel like,
and you know the version of the one that Brit's going to give later on, because I mean she tolerated a lot. She tolerated a lot. Well, we will, but I mean, the TV series, in my opinion, it's its own thing. It's based on the Railway series books. Is not books. The series and the Railway series are two totally different things.
Very, very different.
The only constants are like Thomas and the characters that have been lifted from the books. It's not one and the same thing.
Yeah.
And this is, and actually, I straight away think about the TV series version of Thomas and the Railway series. Thomas. I know our friend Stuart has many views on that one. Thomas is just a grumpy git. But I think that the SoundCloud interview with Wilbert on I really like, because actually it's Margaret's on it as well, actually. And Wilbert sounds, it's only what I think 7 years between that and Thomas the Tank Engine Man, but he sounds like quite young in his voice. And there's the Desert Island discs that he did in the 60s, where which is quite interesting. The interviewer is very ignorant. He's very ignorant of railways. Is the interview? He says something like, "Most of us think that railways are a blot on the landscape." I'm surprised Wilbert didn't bop him on the head at that point. Welsh way. Hold on. So Mike says, so we're talking about iOS and prices. And Mike says, you might as well say how much I spent on mine. I will, Mike. Mike's cost £500.
It's a lot.
And as much as I love the book, I don't think it's worth that price.
Well, I think what Mike said, he ended up paying about.
The fandom is.
Sorry, Ryan.
It's like with the props, some of the props as well. I mean, the price that you pay, the price that the command is basically the price that the fandom is basically driven up, or certain members of the fandom have driven up to that state, because they're that keen to get their hands on it.
Oh, the chat's gone wild now at the price.
500. Yeah, Mike was saying it was kind of. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. Like, I'm pretty sure he paid about 250 because he split it halfway with his parents after finishing university. After he got his degree, it was a degree present, and I think his parents asked what he wanted, and he said, "This. It's a lot of money. I'll contribute." So it's dual effort. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Mike.
Two-Face Tart Productions does a copy of Awdry's appearance on Desert Island Disc exist? It does, and I will put it in the chat. The BBC released it a few years ago.
Also, Mike's justifying the price by he needs it for work.
I'll put it in Google Drive.
It was on BBC iPlayer, I'm pretty sure, on the BBC Radio 2 section.
Here we are.
So, Golden Eagle Studios, Desert Island Discs was a section on BBC Radio back in the 60s? 70s?
I think it ran for quite a while, actually. I think it was a long-serving thing.
It still does. It's still on BBC 4. Radio 4.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's essentially like they interview a person, like in this case, the Reverend, but, you'll get like actors, other authors, like people who've made a name for themselves, essentially, or are in public knowledge. And they'll go, if you were stranded on a desert island, what records, what songs would you take with you? I think it's like 3, is it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's so many songs, and what 3 items would you take with you?
Yeah, that's right. What 3 items and what songs would you take with you? And then they give their reasonings why and have a chat about it and stuff. And they play the songs, obviously.
what I just this may be boring for people, so I apologise now, but I might as well mention it. One of the pieces he mentioned is from an opera. It's from a big choral work. Those that don't know, I'm a professional musician, and I play with as well as teaching. I play with orchestras. I'm often doing choral society works, and one of them is the piece is for Elijah. And as soon as Wilbert said that, I was like, ugh. I've played it several times. It is long. You don't stop and you're exhausted by the end of it. And I think the one in the end, it's like, out of all of them, Wilbert, which would you choose? And let's just point out, one of the things he did was, I think he's recording Metallica, and I thought it was Dolgok. But I think
is it The Old Lady Drives to Dolgok?
It is, but I think it's referenced that it's Taliclin, isn't it?
It is. I've got the album upstairs, Tom. So if it's the same one, it's Taliclin. Because I've got it on a small record, but I haven't dug the record player out to play it.
It was number 2, you see, when it said The Old Lady Drives to Dolgok. Yeah. That's one of the things. But no, when they say, Wilbert, out of all the things, which would you have? He goes, I think it would be the Elijah. I was like, oh, Wilbert.
So my friend Ed is currently in the chat on the Britrail Tog, and he doesn't know what the iOS book is.
Hold on, I'll go and get mine.
Oh, Tom's excited. While Tom's getting it, I'll explain what it is. So, as Two-Faced Tom has just said, The Island of Sodor, Its People, History and Railways is a book that was released. Was it 1980?
87 it was published.
87, sorry. 84's TV series. 87. Wilbert and George Awdry essentially detail the entire history of the island, going back to like Viking invasions and the old Sudric kings. They go through all of the history of that and all the history of the railway, all the locomotives, the pre-Northwestern Railway companies that predate Thomas being on the island stuff. So the Sodor and Mainland, the Wellsworth and Sudbury, and the Knapford and Ellsbridge Light Railway, which was all run by coffee pots. Oh, you've got it. All right, just
yeah. Hold on. Can you see the comment? Hold on. He's put, that I got it given for my 10th.
Nah. You're very lucky to get that because it's worth a lot of money now.
Michael will be going at the screen at that.
I've
just for those who would like to see it. Get your finger out.
It's lovely. I've yet to get a copy. I've very thankfully I've got a PDF version of it, which I was given, which was very kind. And it's been a brilliant resource, but I really want it as a book.
Tom's is ultra rare. It's not signed. Everyone else has been signed at some point.
Yours is the one out.
And the important fact, as Luke just said,
George Awdry
and G Awdry, and it is. But and to make matters worse, that was the price when it came out.
£12.95.
A bargain.
Mike is raging.
Poor Mike.
Hold on. Why are you raging at me? I'm not the one that got it given, and I'm not the one that got it for £25. That was Ryan. But it is very nice. It's a very nice book. Very bright book. And if I hear Ben talking about selling it again, I'll come and nick your copy. I almost said, Ben, I was almost like, yours is a signed one. Do you fancy doing a swap?
No. No, definitely not.
So actually, I think it was who was it who mentioned it? Hold on a minute, let me scroll back up. 2 ticks.
But I might have 2 Great Western Auto Coach carriages for sale shortly.
Oh, okay. Every out of print book, iOS and Tolison. There we are.
All right, stop it. To be fair, it's only half of me. I've got the chorus one, the Telephone chorus one.
Actually, GWR Shunter, I didn't realise the book was so small. Yeah, it's. What I will say is, it's a far better book than Reading Between the Lines.
Oh yeah. I don't know what went wrong with Reading Between the Lines, but I'm inclined to think Christopher didn't have a copy of Island of Sodor to hand.
Yeah, that good point, that Luke.
Because he gets the The tall controller, not tall controller, small controller.
Small controller.
Yeah, he gets the small controller's name wrong. It's Mr. Fergus Duncan, as we all know, and he puts Mr. Francis Duncan.
You're going to get in trouble there, Luke. Tall controller. That's Stuart.
It is. It's Colonel Holman Stephens.
I tell you what, one bit I've not really looked much into, but is this, the section about old kings and things and his old history of Sodor. But I did, me and Stuart were on a video chat earlier in the week or last week, and actually we were talking about, Stuart said to me, would the NWR have a Pullman? And I was like, oh, interesting. And we were trying to come up with different names for it. And Stuart kept saying, the Sudrian's such a good name, but he's already used it, because obviously
Yeah.
And the one that Stuart came up with, the one I said, I said it, and Stuart went, oh, that's good. The Regency. Because at the time, it's a period in Sodor history when they were
I like that.
against, I think, against England. And Regency works well as a Pullman.
So quickly to Welsh Way. Thomas was Vickerstown pilot. He wasn't the shed pilot. He was the station pilot in the very early books. That's where Thomas starts off. It's not Tidmouth at the beginning of the railway series. It's Vickerstown. 1914 to 1925, the railway's headquarters were all at Vickerstown. And Thomas was station pilot there up until Thomas and the Trucks. And then, oh, pardon me. And then, I'm sorry. And then after Thomas and the Trucks, he was punished and moved to Wellsworth. And then in 1925, well, I'd say like 24, James's crash happens, does the breakdown train, and then he's moved to Farquhar branch line the next year when it opens with the extension up to Farquhar. Because, yeah, the Farquhar branch line only went up to Wellsbridge until 1925.
Golden Eagle Studio. I have TIOS, RBT, Psycho. I don't know. I think I got mine off Amazon. So my reading between the lines. I think they were all signed.
Apart from yours.
No, my reading between the lines is signed.
Oh, reading between the lines. Sorry, I thought you just meant your iOS.
No. Yeah, just mine. Mine's the only
one.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, this is an interesting one. GWR Shunter. Didn't Christopher's book have a ridiculous amount of editions released? I heard something about how him constantly getting the info wrong, so they had to keep re-releasing it. I thought it was just printed the once.
I think it was because it wasn't true.
That's not true. I mean, printed once as a hardback, and I think it was printed again as a paperback. However, there was no amendment. I don't think there was any amendments made to the omission of like the what do you call it, the twin engines.
Yeah.
So I would have been quite interested to read a wee bit more about like the missing coach and that kind of thing, and
that's my massive gripe.
The stories behind
the fact that book 15's missed out, which is one of my favourites anyway.
See, mine's a paperback copy.
So is mine.
That, Thomas, the fact that it's a significant. It's also a very significant book within the Railway series, because this is the first instance that we're getting that steam engines are being scrapped. This is the first instance that steam is properly under threat.
Yeah,
folk completely overlook it. It's a very significant book.
It is, and
it's a very significant turning point in the Railway series history.
Because it's the first time you've got some engines that have appeared that essentially, if they didn't get there, they die. It's quite, and that's what I do like about the book, is it has that constant threat of, we know that Douglas is the one that shouldn't be there, and that's why there's that sense of throughout the whole book sort of thing. I mean, we first heard reference to scrapping things was obviously with Trevor but I think in a way,
Trevor.
I think you're right, Ryan. I think almost the Railway series has lived in a bit of this like idealistic world with these lovely engines, and you get to 15 and it's like, but there's bigger things going on, and of course that's then what's the word? So that evolves more once we get to Stepney.
Yeah, the later Railway series very much starts to tackle scrapping, preservation, promoting the heritage railways, which is what I love in those last books.
Oh, hold on, sorry. clicking the wrong thing.
Because when you look at, when you get like, you know how 8 Phases was the last one, number 12 was meant to be the last. I think that kind of is the last like proper Age of Innocence book before Ducking the Diesel Engines comes along and it's like, right, this is the next phase. Here we go. I've written a blog which is going to come out probably in the next couple of days or so. Awdry's how Awdry tackled the other railway, with regards to the fact that initially he starts. I mean, initially you see the other railway, and even for the outset is very, very different to Sodor. Sodor's got all these wonderful, bright, colourful engines. The other railway has all the engines coming across to take care of the Fat Controller's railway, while the Fat Controller's engines in England are all in black. Then you get to a point where Donald and Douglas are going to get scrapped, and then when you get towards stepping the Bluebell engine, you discover, right, steam's a bit under threat, and then you get to enterprising engines, and the other railway just devolves into this really dark, foreboding place. Like the Badlands, I mean, it just becomes like an increasingly polar opposite to Sodor, which I think is an amazing concept. I mean, I honestly feel that the Reverend Awdry could have done a hell of a lot more. And then bargain as well, I mean, the TV series could have done a lot more with it too. I mean, I think it would have made a more compelling counterpoint to Sodor than what it does now, where it's just basically Sodor light.
It is. That's what it's become.
There's no conflict.
That's what it's become in the TV series now, because you've got all these steam locos coming over from over the bridge, and it's like, well, it's like nothing's happened.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
I mean, basically Oliver.
Yeah, Oliver's a good example of it. You know, that's probably one of the grittiest ones you get, where he's actually on the run. You know, like he's nearly been caught a couple of times and stuff. And
it's interesting though how Ryan, so you mentioned like Awdry could have done more and things, and actually Ben came up with a bit of a theory, and actually I heard something this week that there might be something in it. But Ben, you'd said to me how you wondered if the end of Steam was one of the things that made Wilbert stop writing. And then I think it was Tom Props on Twitter posted an interview from about 1995 in Australia. And whether it's true or not, the presenter said something that the Reverend stopped writing because he thought with Steam ending, people wouldn't be interested in it anymore. And I just thought, I wonder if there is something in that.
Yeah, I kind of thought that, because the thing was, I just read the bit in the autobiography where he was on about he was struggling when it came to the last two books. He really was struggling to come up with fresh stories and things, and then when it came to 72 and they were like, another book, and I think the sentence is, the barrel was well and truly empty, as in he had nothing to give. And being someone who was influenced from being a very small boy, listening to the engines pound up the gradient towards Box Tunnel, where, you know, close to where he used to live, maybe steam was always something that was part of him, that he enjoyed, you know, and that when steam died, so did perhaps the inspiration to write on. And plus the fact he was using real life references. He took stories from things that he had read that had happened to some engine somewhere and adapted them. And, you know, steam finishing on August the 4th, 1968, and that was it. End of. Probably you could say he did well to drag a couple more books out. Maybe that was one of the reasons he went to mid-Sodor going, well, I've done the layout, let's have a story about it. I've got a little bit of inspiration to work with, and then we'll finish with Thomas. And then that was it. There was nothing inspirational about the boxes on wheels being diesels. Perhaps that was it. It just, I don't know, it sort of seems to fit in a way.
But again, though, you've got I mean, like, after steam was basically abolished, you've got Barry's, and you've got stories coming out of Barry's scrapyard, and you've also got like diesels getting decommissioned as well. They're standardising things. So my argument in the blog that I've put is maybe there was a bit like, maybe in retrospect, there was a bit more life left in the books when you've got when the diesels are now under threat as well. So we kind of bring back a bit. There's kind of more understanding between the two.
I do think there's a lot that could have definitely been.
I don't know. Maybe.
No, I think you make a good point, Ryan, because I've in Enterprising Engines, there's groundwork laid out for Burr, and I think like he's got potential as a character because you've got him. He's friends with Henry, and then it says about how like the northwestern region, you know, it's different to the ways are different to the other railway, but Burr prefers them. Then it says the engines gave him a welcome. You didn't say if it was warm or not, so I'd think, and Gordon would feel under threat because Boco's he's a branch line diesel, pulls trucks, doesn't care. Burr, however, is an express loco. That's a threat to Gordon and the other passenger locos. There could be tensions there, and like I say, Burr coming to terms with how different the other railway is to the Northwestern, and you can expand upon that further when like diesels start being withdrawn. Like you could even do stuff with Boco, because like the rest of his class is at Barrow essentially in the end of their lives, being withdrawn in front of him.
Barrow and Workington, yeah.
And actually, Two-Faced Art Production says, I think I said in my Christopher blog, but it's a shame that Barry's very underutilized.
Yeah, he just skips over it. He skips over like the
response in James and the diesel engines. And that's it.
Yeah, it goes. The engines had welcomed Burr and accepted him. It's like, could we not have seen that? Like, I would have really loved to have seen it.
We did. One picture, he was smiling. But
no,
it's funny actually that you look at Awdry, a lot of the characters and things that we've all come to love in the books, and many of them have had like with the exception of a couple of classes, they're all either experimental or not great. Like look at Boco, the class 28s were the reason they had 5 axles was to spread the weight and that they would have a high route availability. When they were actually built, they were found to be something nearly 10, 12 tons overweight, and therefore it barred them from most of the work that they were going to be put on. They were still put on the Condor Express, which was an express goods train, which ran to Glasgow. There wasn't much express about it because it was actually average speed of 40 mile an hour because it took hours to get up there, with about 2 crew changes as well, if I remember rightly. They suffered from numerous faults from day one, but 2 of the major faults was crankcase failure. They used to split on the rear right corner, I think it was, and there was a couple of other sort of problems with them. And then it all came down to funding because British Railways had gone out and just ordered off the drawings. It came to like, well, who was responsible for the overhaul or the repair of some of the failures? So there was at one point there was only 3 Class 28s in service at one point due to major failures, and they were all shipped into Manchester and held in depot until there was an agreement, and then BR and Metrovic actually split the funding, and then they went, right, what we're going to do with this lot? Oh, we'll send them to Barrow because there was work for them there, and when they moved to Barrow, that's when they had the greatest availability. They actually were the most sort of reliable. They were used
pretty well up in that area. It was well suited.
They were used for tanker traffic. They were used on passenger. They were used on express passenger from St Pancras to Manchester when they were new. So they were, because they were suitable for up to about 10 coaches. Anything over that, you were sort of looking at Type 3, so Class 37 territory, or Type 4s. But yeah, they were just unfortunately one of those designs that looked good and turned out to be a bit of a white elephant, unfortunately. But then Awdry comes along and he brings Bear, which happens to be one of the best Type 3s going. But because they were diesel hydraulic, not diesel electric, that's why BR got rid of them. Otherwise, they might have hung on even longer in actual service. But they were one of the best diesel hydraulics out there.
So, and there should be a bit like a subtext in iOS. And you're on about like the Class 28s were a bit on the heavy side. So there should be a bit on the branch where it says, when Boca arrived, several bridges were upgraded.
Well, yeah.
Just going back to like the diesel thing. There was an idea that I kind of had a thing for, which I never really followed through with, which would be a very interesting perspective, I think. I don't know if the Rev would have done it, but a diesel who had kind of then, built quite young, working like quite early on in modernization. So, there's still plenty of steam locos around. And the end of an exploration of the preconceptions of steam locomotives, because they have all been quite harsh towards the diesel. The diesel might not be like the other diesels, might be perfectly fine, but because all the steam locos kind of assume, and they're like, oh, you're going to replace us, don't like you, you've got, there's room for character stuff there where like the diesel is very wary of steam locos because they've been nothing but mean and harsh and cold towards them.
Yeah, and they're coming onto this island that's full of them. Whereas
and might be quite. But then, like the locos would, the steam loco characters would probably be like that at first, but then realize, no, you're different. Don't like most of it.
Actually, now you've said that, Luke, actually, there's a very good point, because you look at branch line engines, and Thomas has his little incident where he decides he's going to go for breakfast through a wall into the station master's house, and then Daisy appears in the next story. But then at the end of the story, you've got Percy going away to the works, Thomas has just arrived, but yet there's a big there's a big time frame until we go back to the branch lines. And you don't know Thomas's reaction to this.
Thomas and Daisy will not get on 100%.
I know. But it's never.
It's a shame.
Really. But it's the same thing.
But it's slightly retconned, isn't it? In when Wilbert brought out the Clive Spong illustrated one-off, Thomas Comes to Breakfast, because Daisy arrives as Thomas is there, battered, waiting to be taken away.
Oh, does he? I haven't got that.
Hold on. Just to quickly say, just seeing what's been going on in the chat there, Luke. Might you have acquired an iOS?
Maybe. I don't know how much yet, but because Brick Rail Tog's a mate of mine, Ed, from down at the Teleclin, and he said that I'd probably have more use for it than he does, so I might have just got one. It's been a very productive night for me. No, that's good. Well, no, I'm looking forward to reading that blog, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna hopefully get it out sometime this week. There's two actually. I'm doing one on the Railway series version. I'm doing one on the TV series.
Yeah.
Well.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
Just because it's just interesting. It's just interesting. I've been planning this blog for ages. I've been planning it for ages, and I thought to myself, you know what? They've totally and utterly mucked up with the TV series stuff, because there was so much potential to have the other railway as just a completely separate and foreboding place. Possibly like a rival to Sodor, in every single way, but they never capitalised on it. Then after about 1998, it just became like a feeder.
Yeah, I think like Series 5 and or whichever, I can't remember, whichever one like Stepney is in. I think that's Series 5. Like, you get the real foreboding sense. Obviously, that's very far removed from what happens in the Railway series, but those scenes from Series 5 has always stuck with me because of how chilling the other railways represented, with the diesels lined in the sidings, and just everything about it. Like, as much as I'm not a fan of Stepney being, retconned to being rescued by Rusty, I love or the stuff they do with the other railway as a concept.
Going back to the Daisy thing. Oh, look, sorry there. And can you see that?
That's interesting.
I've had this.
Daisy, wonderful.
I've had this question on the screen for a bit.
What?
Onto I need to answer with
That's you.
So Christopher was too cowardly to muster an explanation.
Too cowardly to muster an explanation. How did this film could have made sense?
So Stuart mentioned this. I think it does make sense. Okay, so right, here we go. Correct me if I'm wrong along the way. The whole point is Douglas is the engine that shouldn't be there. Donald is. And I've always got the impression out of the two, Donald's a bit more confident than Douglas is and sort of things. Douglas has messed up with the coach that comes in on the Wild Nor'Wester. Donald's appeared and it's like, I've really messed up. So the thought is, rather than Douglas be sort of taking the blame for it and being like, oh yeah, I've messed up, Donald's idea is sort of swap tenders, I'll go off, so yes, you've messed up, but you're out of the way because I'm you. And then you just pretend to be me and just be like, oh, well, I don't know what's going on. But Hat's really clever. And I still love that line. Douglas thought he was crying. He wasn't. He swung around. He rapped, Douglas, why are you masquerading with Donald's tender? Although Betton made the comment of how long would that actually take to sort of uncouple tenders.
Well, that's what Two-Faced Tart has just said.
Sorry. I apologise then. It's just because Stuart didn't like, oh dear, Stuart's going to be angry with me now, but Stuart was like asking like, how does it actually make sense sort of thing. So that's how I see it. But that's a very fair point. On that point, yeah, I hold my hands up. I can't defend Wilbert on that one. You're on your own, Wilbert.
Right. Well, we've had a bit of an extra discussion.
Right, lads, I'm going to log off and go to bed.
No worries, Brian.
Take care, Ryan.
We've went down tangent tonight. Started narrowgauge and then we went on to this. Right, enjoy the rest of your evening, folks. Pleasure. I'm hoping to do this again at some point.
Absolutely.
Enjoy it.
All
Good
the best.
night.
Later.
Good chat.
Oh, look. Oh.
Oh, God, that took me off guard.
The three unwise men.
Yeah.
Oh, in fairness, hold on. If we're the other way around, we like that photo of us at Ribble together. It was very we need Lass, who's licking her bottom at the moment. You didn't need to know that. Lass is my dog. Can I just clarify that for anybody watching? Oh, it's late. It's midnight. There we go. It's the witching hour.
Let's go to bed.
Wouldn't it be easy for Donald's crew or Douglas to just tell the others' crew about the train and where it goes?
Yeah, and then just send Donald's crew on Douglas, keep Douglas's crew with Donald, and then you've got the two engines. It does work that way, but then,
or you just have the crew being honest, or Douglas being honest and go, well, nobody told us.
yeah.
Why stick us on and think something that we don't know what we're doing about? Callum Walker, the three railway people. I nearly said the Awdry Rights. That sounds like a really bad band.
Your order rights.
That does, yeah.
Oh, Callum. Oh, yeah, this is a good one. What are your thoughts on Duck? I like Duck. I like 57XXs. I built a layout that has nothing but pretty much 57XXs, all because it goes back to being a kid and liking Duck. And Luke likes him because he's in my model. If anyone's seen my Twitter avatar, it's pretty.
Oh, yes.
Stuart edited it, and so it just looks like you've got. It's a Model U figure of Luke because Luke was scanned, and he's there looking out the window like that, looking out the cab like that, and Duck's just like, oh, it's him again.
Right.
I'll get him to change the face. We'll have a happy face or something.
Yeah. Right. I think I'm getting a bit tired as well, to be honest.
No, that's fine. I think we'll
3 hours is we've had a good innings. Past hour's been packed with conversation, and obviously it's because we opened up to just general Railway series.
On a genuine point, to those who are watching, and actually, you know what? We've had a real high viewership. We've had it's averaged about 20 people watching.
Very good.
Now we're on 17. I think when we last did the other ones, we're down to about 5 at this point.
Yeah,
But
no, it's been very good.
I mean, we enjoy talking about the topics, but actually, it's nice when people ask, genuine questions.
Yeah,
About the Railway series, and if we've got our own thoughts on it, and if we can answer, we will do.
There's points like when we were doing the Skarloey stuff when it went a little bit quiet at time here and there, and it's always nice to have people commenting. And I can confirm I now have Island of Sodor book on its way to me.
Yeah.
I didn't get 1,500 quid. Jeez.
No, I'm so sorry.
I'm honestly, I am so chuffed for you
Thank you
because
very much, Ed.
look at his face. He's like he's 5 years old again. I mean, look, I know Ben keeps talking about selling it, and actually, I will say this, and I'm not trying to rub it in or anything. I have a PDF of it. It's useful. I use it reference, but it is nice just sitting down and reading it. It is nice. Is it a signed one, or have you joined the unsigned group?
He needs to go and find it out and see if it is or not.
Oh, that is. I'm really, really chuffed for you. Heisel asked me, how is my Welsh layout? It's fine. It's not progressing. I'm afraid I'm just weird, and I'm like, ever since I was a kid, if I was like into something, I'd be into Thunderbirds, or I'd be into Thomas, or I'd be into Star Wars. I couldn't be into like lots of things at once. And it's like for the past year, I've been into Railway series, and it's just it just sort of is sitting there, and I genuinely feel bad that I just use it for posing my my Farquhar engines on. Yeah,
It's getting used in one sense, though, Tom.
Yeah, true.
Might not be the way you wanted it to, but it's still being used in a sense.
And like at the moment, I'm just so sort of Skarloey obsessed at the moment, and I'm just absolutely loving.
Whose fault is that?
Yours.
We've noticed, haven't we, Luke? He hasn't finished his Thomas yet.
No.
It will be at some point, but like,
I'm just jealous of you all because I've stopped modelling for the foreseeable. The whole idea of me selling iOS it has cropped up, and it'll probably sit in my mind for a little while, and I can't model, and there'll be stuff in my collection up in the attic that will probably get dug out, dusted off, never been run, never been rolled, been out the box twice, and be sold because I just need A, space for the parts that I'm currently painting that are in my garage, and B, I need to focus on one thing. And as a little boy, my heart was set on having an engine of some description, and I'm lucky to have one. But it's funny, I don't feel like I own it. It owns me. So every time I walk into the garage, I get mocked by the parts sitting there going, "Get on and pull your finger out. Get your finger out," as Awdry would say. And I just need to finish it. I need to push on. I've got still 2 huge chunks of the project needs to be started, let alone progressed. And yeah, I want it so it's running so that everyone can enjoy it, so people can come and visit wherever it might be, and yeah, and get to see it running. And the plus of the fact it's never run in preservation, or not for public use, any preservation. I think it only ever got steamed about half a dozen times, and then they painted it up nice, shoved it in the shed on display, and that was it. So it really is a kit of parts, as it were, and there's a lot to be done. So yeah, I enjoy looking at Tom Stewart and Luke's modelling and others, what they do modelling wise, and it's like maybe one day I'll get back to it. But I mean, when the garage is empty, I could start building something in there, but that's going to be a long way off. So yeah, my main project's got to be the my Andrew Barclay. So.
I think I know what Luke's looking for. It's to do with the high. Yeah, I've always looked at that as being Percy being a little bit posh, and it's like the old posh way where you put a H in front of things. Hi, I can't. It's just like I, but it's like a posh. Hi.
Whereabouts?
It's when Percy will be our.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's just I, but it's like a bit of a posh, because he's a bit like posh public school boy. Yeah. I can't. Sort of thing.
Oh, that's a good question from Callum Walker. Before we go off.
What is your favourite Awdry chess book that isn't about any of the now gauge railway engines?
I liked it.
Island of Sodor. Yeah, you would say that now, wouldn't you? It's the best book in the world. I would, for me, I used to say Enterprising. I'd possibly say Twin Engines now.
I think for me, like my absolute favorite is Very Old Engines, but obviously that's narrow gauge. I think I'm in the same boat. If I would once upon a time probably say Enterprising Engines, and I still love it, and it is up there. But Tramway Engines has really shut up for me recently. Just because I've reread it and it's brilliant. I love it. I don't know if it is my favorite. I can't. I think it's quite a. I think Enterprising and Tramway are very much same level for me.
Yeah, I don't know. It used to be years ago. It used to be Tank Engine Thomas again, but
that is very good.
Because Thomas has always been my favourite character, with Edward at a very close second. But there's like Tramway Engines, I think as well is up there. But I think I appreciate that more over the years that I've got to like learn about the J70, and I've got quite a few books on the Wisbech and Upwell Tramway, how they worked. I've got some of the drawings for the J70 as well in my collection upstairs, and I just think they're such a quaint engine. So that certainly puts Tramway Engines up there. But there's Stepney the Bluebell Engine. I think that for me was a really good book. That was like quite dark as well, although I didn't appreciate that at the time when I was a lot younger. But you've got that picture of there's two engines in the siding, and the guy looks like he's just about to gas axe one into bits. And then you've got the whole thing of Stepney being preserved, and then he's talking about his friends, and then he's there on the island. And I think that's a cracking book. But there's stories that I could take from other books as well. And just one off the top of my head that will always go down as one of the favourite stories for me is Edward's exploit. I just think the artist work in it and the story is just brilliant. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I think Mainline has some cracking bits. I like Wrong Road was always a favourite of mine.
Oh,
yeah. Two-Faced Art Productions, it has to be 8 Famous Engines, although it's mostly due to the fact that it's the one I have memories of. I think for me, that was a big... maybe I didn't know it was necessarily a changeover from a previous artist, but for me, that's when you look at it and you go, these look like real engines. And, you know, some of the ones of Gordon... I loved the whole thing in Gordon Goes Foreign where Gordon's like trying to go through Barra. But for me, it was the coaching stock, because although... not that old, I don't remember Blood and Custard, but the coach of Blood and Custard, and it was like, I know these from like model railway photos, that these are real liveried coaches. They're not just generic. They felt like...
8 Famous was one of the first kind of attaching Sodor to the real world.
Yeah.
Like it'd been, I can't even remember if it had been said before, but with Toby, of course, because he went on holiday to England. But 8 Famous Engines is definitely the thing of like, no, they are, it's connected to the real, here they are in London, if you know what I mean. It's the beginning of that kind of side of the Railway series.
Callum Walker, what's your favourite Christopher book? And now there is an awkward silence.
Honestly, I can't.
That's easy.
Really say.
That's easy with me.
I know what you're going to say. Book 30, isn't it?
But more about Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah, it is.
To be fair, yeah, I do remember
because it goes back to the branch line.
I remember
to me it is always like the part of the island that if I could visit, if it was real, I could visit. That'd be the first place I'd go to. It goes back to that.
I remember the stories mainly from the TV series with Thomas Percy and Nicole.
Yeah, so do I, Luke. Yeah,
those memories stuck with me, especially with that. It becomes such weirdly such an iconic story that at times I do actually forget it was one of Chris's. See, in
the TV series, it it made sense when in the line is Duck made friends with, is it Toby and Bertie? I think the line is.
Yeah.
But when you look at the collection of books, it doesn't make sense because Duck's been on the island for so many years.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work in that sense. But yeah, it's
yeah, that's a good shout, because I was going to say I'd probably need to reread them all before saying which is my favorite, because it's been so long since I've actually sat through and read them all. Like I'm currently just like before bed, I've been reading one book a night out of this, because it's been a while since I've read them all. So I was like, yeah, might as well. So I'm just about to start more about Tank Engine Thomas again. Just about to start that.
I think with Chris's books, I think Ben and I have, because Ben and I are a little older than him.
Just a bit.
But Ben more so. Sorry. I've spoken about this. We grew up with Chris's books coming out. And I remember there was an excitement about going to a bookshop and going, oh, there's a new Railway series title out. So as a kid growing up, Chris's were my favourite because they were sort of current.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's sort of gone full reversal, whereas they're sort of my least favourite. Things for me that don't quite make sense. I think if I had to choose a favourite, I liked Gordon the High Speed Engine. Again, because when it involved stuff off Sodor, and you had like blue diesels and stuff, and I was like, it sort of interested me. I remember getting New Little Engine. I remember getting when it first came out, and again, I liked it because I felt Clive Spong's illustrations were better than they were in the first ones.
Yeah, we don't talk about really useful legends.
We don't talk about book 27. We just don't talk about it. So,
quick question, Tom. When did Gordon the High Speed Engine? When was that published? Because you're good on your published dates.
89, I think, or 88.
Just as a question as a popped up, was it? Do we think based on Blue Peter? Well, no, Blue Peter ruined itself in '96, I think it was, when it actually had its incident on Durham Viaduct.
Yeah, so the book came out before Blue Peter, but I think it's just based on general stories of locos. Like
the thing is, there were so many stories of them. Was it Platform 13, Tom? You might know this. I think it was that line. York. One of them out of York, northbound, where if you didn't sit right through the water, trying to start was an absolute nightmare because you were on a curve. And there's a story of, I think, an A1, as in a peppercorn one. It's in my book upstairs, where it took nearly 10 minutes of going backwards and forwards to try and get the train to move because of damp rail.
And it's interesting that he uses Gordon, which, for those that wouldn't know, the regulator on a steam locomotive, the go lever, can be in different position. It can be on a lot of engines. You lift it like that way, like sideways.
Yeah, it's mounted centre on the back end.
It's a pull out. It's a pull out one. And of course, Gordon would have a pull-out regulator. I know he had his rebuild at Crewe, but the fittings in the cab would still be great.
Stay the same.
And it's interesting that it was a similar incident because it was on a Peppercorn A2, which would have a similar. Ben might know more on this one.
It's a pull-out regulator. The regulator valve is completely different.
Multi-valve regulator, which only about 5 of the A2s got the multi-valve regulator because it was a test bed for the Britannias. And I heard it was something to do with the driver hadn't been on Blue Peter before, and it involved with him trying to shut the regulator, and it wouldn't close. And I heard something about it sprung back out, and it broke his wrist.
No, it wasn't the regulator that sprung back out. He couldn't shut it because it primed. The water was quite high, and so he was having difficulty at being able to shut it. So if you are in a wheel slip situation and you can't shut the regulator, one of the things that you were told to do is wind it into mid-gear. And when you put it into mid-gear on the reverser, you essentially are stopping the steam from passing from the steam chest into the cylinders. Thereby, it would stop slipping. When he had unclipped the reverser, it spun. He didn't have hold of it or whatever, and it was the reversing lever that actually broke his arm. and he couldn't get it into reverse. And they reckon that it was the wheels were revolving roughly about 186, 190 mile an hour. And it caused something like over 100 and some odd thousand pounds worth of damage.
There is for those who don't know railway terminology too well. Priming is where you get water going into the cylinders, which is never good because water doesn't compress, whereas steam does.
Yeah, what you want going into the cylinders is steam to move the rods. Once you've got water in that, that's not moving the cylinders. It's you're hitting once you've compressed it enough, you're hitting a brick wall essentially.
Yeah.
The thing with big express engines,
putting out the chimney.
Yeah, the thing with express engines as well is, or engines with superheaters, is you could get it to prime, and that water flashes over to steam, which can also cause the wheel spin to last longer until you get it to shut.
Right. Quickly, I think I'm going to call it a night here for me.
No,
Right,
the only thing I was going to say, Luke, was just that mid gear is like the equivalent of neutral in a car.
Yeah.
Righto.
No, well, I think we'll all call it. I think a night there. But thank you very much for listening and to our
thanks for all the questions.
Thanks for all the questions. So we will catch up with you all very soon.
Bye.
See you later.